The road to the temple was lined with towering statues, and young men packed the path, all gathering for a ceremony that mattered. In this world, the moment a kid turns 12, they step into the temple and get their gift right there. The high priestess carried out the ceremony with every ounce of solemn power in the room. She thrust life scrolls into the kids' hands, those sacred seals that would decide their futures. Most kids were handed combat gifts from the very start, because God himself first brewed the strength in people, meant to fight off demons. Now the monsters' threat crumbled, and kids everywhere started getting gifts that pushed civilization forward. Ravel's heart raced, because he was sure he'd finally get something genuinely useful. His friend Anna swore Ravel was insanely smart, because the truth was he just loved soaking up anything new. And then, finally, it was his turn to step up to the priestess. Anna sprinted past him and snatched one of the rarest gifts. Everyone in the room gasped, because she looked soft and breakable, yet she was a real warrior. After that, one of the nuns pulled her into the back room for a talk. Then Ravel's turn finally hit, and instead of some mind-blowing power, he got slammed with a baffling talent called diligence, a gift he'd never even heard of. All the kids burst into laughter, and Ravel himself froze. He couldn't wrap his head around this weird gift and how he was supposed to use it. Carlo, one of the guys, ripped into Ravel with cruel jokes, humiliating him and calling him talentless, as if his clumsiest skill was all he'd ever amount to. Carlo himself got a gift from a master swordsman, and the moment he felt that power in his hands, he vowed, right then and there, to rise as a legendary warrior. He went around calling himself the gods, chosen one, chasing the dream of becoming a real knight and bragging that he was far above Ravel. Right after the ceremony, Ravel and Anna slipped back into the village. Then the young man leaned in and demanded what she really said with that priestess behind closed doors. But the girl totally ignored the question like it never got asked. Then the moment they got home, Ravel's stomach was already screaming for something delicious. Ravel turned to his mom and asked if he could cook in the kitchen, and she said yes without a second thought. Ravel quickly flipped up sweet pancakes that looked downright mouth-watering and tasted even better, and Anna practically beamed as she dug in. Suddenly, the girl's smile vanished. She turned to her best friend and spilled the truth. She'd be leaving soon because once she got that gift, everything in her life flipped upside down. Ravel guessed that Anna would be whisked off to the Academy of Heroes, the most prestigious place in all of Tyria, where gifted kids sharpen their powers. The Academy forges real defenders of the kingdom, so temple guards stand watch at every ceremony, eyes locked on each and every gift. Their job is simple to say and deadly to fail: stop kids like Anna with the rarest gifts from escaping. So this Ravel, who's clearly rattled, can't help asking, what does she want more than anything? Anna let out a heavy sigh. When destiny hits you with a gift that strong, you don't get to argue anymore, not ever. She told herself to be proud of the gift, not spin lies. Then anxiety snapped, emotions burst through, and the girl shot out of her seat and ran. Ravel's father stared at Anna's wild behavior. Then the truth hit him. She was the Dragon Knight's talent, and suddenly everything made sense, because that meant she was destined to become the king's hero. He didn't just get shocked. His jaw dropped at his son's gift, too. Unlike his father, his mom swore diligence fit Ravel to a T, and even the most ordinary pancakes he cooked turned out incredible. The boy went all in to make Anna happy, and that's exactly why the pancakes came out so tender and dangerously delicious. He couldn't stop thinking about his mother's words. Mom said, talent is a real mystery. She swore her own baking gift felt small and pointless until she opened a shop in the capital and watched it explode with success. He leaned in and said, from now on, I'm coming home late, because before God, a battle is waiting ahead, and kids with real combat talent are going to fight to prove themselves. Even the high priest is coming to this show, so the head chef snapped, every single detail has to be perfect. Now, let's wrap up this conversation. Ravel swallowed his nerves as these stories hit him, because his parents had no clue what was rattling inside his head, especially not the troubled gift he couldn't name, one even the priests had never heard of. Then he snapped. He'd prove he mattered, enroll in the Academy of Heroes, and stay right by Anna's side, no matter what life threw at him. Ravel didn't have much time left before the battle before God, and panic kept clawing at him as he tried to figure out how he was supposed to show up, while his mother's words about the mystery of talents wouldn't stop ringing in his head. It was crystal clear. Diligence was not his strong suit, and he had to scramble fast to learn what this strange power even meant. Ravel craved a gift of wisdom, or raw power, that blew past anything ordinary, and he knew it could only be earned two ways: fighting your way through battles or surviving brutal mind-bending tasks. The gift of wisdom hands you a whole library of knowledge, but it doesn't unlock the hidden secrets, and knowing everything still doesn't mean you understand what truly matters. And honestly, it's just easy to show off knowledge, worth nothing until you can actually use it. So Ravel stopped yearning for that gift. Now the real key is figuring out how his diligence even works. While his other talents basically grew on their own, this one demanded hard, no freebies effort with zero bonuses. What a shame, he put in the effort and still got nothing back. Still, I'd give anything to know what those with this kind of talent pulled off in the past, but Ravel wouldn't let himself lose hope. All talents are basically magic. You can almost feel how easy it is to grab when you're gifted with wisdom, but trust me, the truth hits harder. Everything's way more complicated than that. Ravel snapped to the truth. Without magic, he couldn't wield it right, but he wasn't done. He could still boost it by picturing the power inside his body and forcing it to break free. The moment he tried, a brutal pain exploded through him, ripping at his very mind like it couldn't survive. The pain was so brutal that even an adult would have snapped, because without magic, using it at all is nearly impossible. Ravel clenched his teeth. He was done hesitating. He'd push this to the bitter end and forge his magical power no matter what it cost. He drained his body again and again, pouring magic back into himself while the hours slipped by unnoticed. This trial was on the edge of death, and at the end, his magic was gone. He couldn't cast another spell. That grind didn't go to waste. Ravel unlocked the skill, super restoration of magical energy. And honestly, it blew his mind because he never even dared to hope it would work this well. Because of this brand new power, magic recovery skyrocketed, like several times faster than before. But to earn it, you had to drain every last bit of energy and rebuild it 10 times in a row. Earlier, Ravel had leveled up with hard-earned wisdom, but nothing like this had ever happened. Now he sat there, eyes locked in the future, plotting how to get even stronger. The muscle-strengthening skill gave a short burst of endurance, but getting it meant draining every drop of your magic, and then grinding through brutal physical training. Turns out the rules for unlocking skills aren't the same for anyone. Each person has to figure out on their own how to grow. Ravel stared into the truth and went. So this is what diligence really means, charging up, building power, and turning it into real abilities. And once he truly understood that, he knew he'd crush anybody. The very next day, that boy went all in on training. He leveled up not one, not two, but 3 skills at once. Muscle enhancement, magic control, and body strengthening, and just like that, his whole life flipped. After a hard rest, Ravel couldn't help himself. He tested his brand new skills and dug through his latest wins again, because this felt like his biggest victory of the last few days. To boost his body, he had to slam muscle power together with magic control. But if he used his wisdom right, he could uncover the requirements for even more terrifying skills. Manipulating magic felt like a door that opened for everyone, so Ravel started hunting for the same kind of power. Then his dad clocked his weird behavior and demanded what was going on with him. Ravel didn't see that conversation coming and nearly choked on his drink. Then it hit him hard. If he masters his skills, he'll finally draw the high priest's attention. While his father was drying off after that shower, Ravel had already slammed a decision into place. He was going to get close to honor again no matter what, even if it meant enrolling in the Academy of Heroes. Meanwhile, confident Carlo was showing off his swordsmanship, and by now he'd already sliced through several opponents in that special tournament. The High Priestess looked shaken by Anna's condition. Anna kept saying she felt awful and couldn't hold her ground as the Dragon Knight, while Carlo, on the other hand, snapped that they needed brand new opponents. Right then, Ravel burst onto the scene, declaring he wanted to prove his combat skills, and Carlo couldn't hide his grin because he hated Ravel and just went right back to humiliating him. One priest warned that God only allows fights for people with real fighting talent, but the priestess refused to stop the duel. Carlo was primed to smash his opponent. He'd always despised Ravel, but now Ravel wasn't the same anymore, and for the first time he could finally fight back for real. Carlo didn't wait for the signal. He lunged in and tore loose a furious storm of punches. Ravel blocked the first hits, but the moment he did, he knew this fight wouldn't be easy to win. Carlo was built like a monster. Anyone else would have crumpled by now. But Ravel refused to break, locking in and blocking every crushing blow like a wall made of steel. The attacks slammed in like lightning, and Ravel could feel the power gap. No matter how much he pushed his body enhancement, his hits still couldn't match Carlo's strength. Carlo blew his stack, and Ravel had no choice but to snap back. Because if even a talentless guy won't resist, then this isn't a real fight at all, it's just a joke. The crowd erupted in noise, shouting at Carlo to stomp that so-called loser right away. Ravel's father stepped in and eased his own movements into a perfect living target, because he wanted Ravel to finally master precision. Ravel chose to unleash imitation. Once he truly locks eyes on another fighter's moves, enhanced vision lets him copy them, but the magic he steals comes out of his own fuel. After all that hard prep, he finally nailed the moves, so perfectly he could match the best warrior out there. And that's exactly what he chose to prove once the battle started. By copying his father's fighting style to the bone, Ravel pulled off the impossible. He beat Carlo flat out, and nobody could even wrap their heads around how he did it, but the crowd was stunned. After winning, Ravel marched up and demanded to join the Academy of Heroes, because he just cut down the master swordsman with his own hands. The priest snapped back that it was impossible, because the Academy is sacred ground, tied to divine dignity, and only the perfectly chosen ones get inside. Ravel froze in shock, then immediately bowed his head, apologized for pushing, and without another word spun on his heel and walked out. The priest only murmured one last thing: that's how the rules work. But I caught myself thinking, these rules don't feel fair at all, because the more you stare at this guy, the more he turns into a total mystery, like even the gods might be scratching their heads. Ravel shot straight to Anna's side, only to find she'd bolted herself in her room and was slipping off to the academy tomorrow. Still, he refused to quit, so he begged his aunt to call her. Anna couldn't believe her ears, and then she lit up when she learned Ravel beat Carlo even without a combat gift. She even confessed fights terrify her because she never wants to hurt anyone. The girl blurted out that her biggest dream is to stay right in the village and live in peace beside Ravel. And then the boy leaned in and told her about the two groups inside the Academy of Heroes. The younger students bring the real magic, while the senior class is packed with rare standouts who have been specially cleared. And when Anna calls Ravel cool, it's basically proof he's headed for greatness. Ravel swore that in just 3 years he'd get strong enough to personally guard Anna and storm into the Academy of Heroes. If Anna can't have peace, then her life won't have a single quiet moment left, and Ravel's still pushing to stay close, even if it makes everything messy. He still remembered how, back in childhood, she'd burst into tears, until he rushed in every single time, and somehow, every fussy mood would vanish the moment his perfect pancakes hit the table. With her cheeks burning, the girl wiped away her tears and blurted out her feelings for Ravel, because in that moment, she knew more than ever. Ravel tried to blurt it out, but Anna clamped a hand over his mouth and demanded he wait 3 years, until he'd already stepped into the academy, while she pushed herself to get even stronger in the meantime. Their friendship burned on for years, and even when everyone insisted Ravel was just an ordinary kid, Anna could still see something special in him. She'd always dreamed of playing only with him, and Ravel had fallen hard for that warm smile of hers. So when everything in their lives started shifting, she decided she had to make him a promise. Like they used to as kids, they crossed their fingers and made a vow. Ravel got it immediately. Even if she's not perfect, he'll do anything just to see her smile. And he'll get stronger for real. He'll do everything to make sure Anna never has to fight or suffer, because that diligence he's chasing is all for her. Ravel's father, Aiden, taught fencing at the school, but he always stayed shrouded in mystery. He'd show up for a brief moment, toss out a few words like clues, and then vanish before anyone could blink. Teachers didn't even bristle at his cold indifference, because they all sensed it, that Aiden had terrifying power coiled inside him. On a gloomy, rainy morning, Anna sprinted toward the Academy of Heroes, and the whole village turned out to see their talented girl off, cheering her on with their best wishes. But Ravel didn't show up. He couldn't bear to watch her leave, and the rain on his face swirled with tears, heavy and shining like gold. He told his father he wasn't about to waste a single second on goodbyes, and Aiden got it instantly. This son didn't just mean it. He was absolutely determined to get into the academy. But Ravel was still just a kid, and his father couldn't believe how badly he wanted to charge in for that girl's sake. Because if he's only thinking about her, he'll get nowhere. Aiden leaned in and said, "Talent isn't everything, so even if Ravel catches the priest off guard with his same old tricks again, they'll toss him out of the academy for good." Ravel stared in shock as his father clocked his plans so fast. Yeah, he really did copy that sword style just to get his shot. But Aiden cut in, dead serious. No trials, no real strength. So he dragged his son into a dark room. No more fencing lessons, not this time. And when Ravel realized his father wasn't even handing him a bamboo sword, he froze in shock. But Aiden snapped a blinding magical flame into existence, an act of demonization, and swore he'd teach him the real power that would make him unstoppable. That demon's flame was unreal. It blazed with no source at all, and father snapped that they couldn't get distracted. They had to lock in on their meditation. By grinding like this, he could actually unlock the power of a demon. Ravella watched his father work and was blown away, so he threw himself into the training with everything he had. Aiden leaned in and said, "There's another world where demons run wild, but you can grab that same power by pushing your body past its limits." Even with all that wisdom, Ravel couldn't uncover anything about demonization. It's classified. So he pressed his father, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Aiden shot back, dead serious. "This power is too dangerous. It could tear nations apart, so there's no way it gets passed around. Demonic flames gorge on the air and drain the life force of everyone nearby, and even the strongest powers start to sputter and fade in their shadow. This flame only burns halfway, but it sucks every ounce of hidden magic out of the body, leaving him writhing in agony and collapsing into pure exhaustion. In ancient myths, people call them demon dwellers from hell, beasts who torture souls just for the thrill of it, though modern demon researchers label them all sorts of different names. To beat the demons, you've got to march straight through your own personal hell and survive every second. Ravel couldn't take it anymore. He crumpled to the floor, writhing in agony, yet Aiden only leaned in and said, "This is just the kickoff. The real test is coming next." The boy felt like the air vanished, like he'd been thrown under the water and held there, and even super recovery couldn't save him. The magic slipped away and roared back again, smashing him with fresh waves of pain. Fear crushed Ravel's spirit. Time slipped away while agony swallowed him whole, and even his father finally asked, "So tell me, do you truly want to become strong?" Even beating the Academy's swordsman isn't the finish line. If Ravel wants to protect the Dragon Knight, he's got to break loose and show everything he's got. Aiden stared at his son and felt something shift. Those eyes told him Ravel was ready to step into a brand new life and learn everything it had to offer. Even with all his wins, Ravel's health was in horrendous shape. His father leaned in and told him, "You can't reach perfection in a single day." Then it was clear, time to get out of that room and get some rest. But Ravel wouldn't back down. He was ready to march back into the trials, steady and unhurried, even as his body screamed from exhaustion. The boy fought for a clear mind, hunting the one way out, and if he could tap into wisdom, he'd finally learn how to seize the demonic power. Even if wisdom just leads you to the answers you're hunting, Ravella still couldn't help admiring how calm the father was, standing there effortlessly beside the roaring flames. He could barely keep his footing. Flames pressed in until his mind turned to smoke. The noise kept swelling, rain drummed off the roof, and it all started to feel completely unbearable. He remembered walking with Anna in the rain, both of them crushed, because they couldn't play with the paper airplane, so all they could do was cower under a big awning. Then Ravel crafted a gorgeous paper airplane, urged them to play at home, and Anna totally blew his mind by unfolding it, leaving the boy stunned. So instead, the girl whipped up a fresh paper boat in seconds and blurted, "If the situation shifts, our plan has to shift too." Then she urged them to launch it straight into the stream. That day was like a breath of sunshine, because his best friend was right there, and they could just play, no stress, no overthinking, no complications. Ravel now stumbled, gasping for breath, and tried to steady himself by pouring in magical power, just like he did back when he was gearing up for the duel against God. That's when he finally picked up magical energy circulation, but his obsession with copying everyone else made him lose sight of it completely. Now it all clicked. This power lets energy surge through his body unhindered, boosts his physical strength, and slashes how much magic he burns. To trigger it, you've got to master magical manipulation completely. Then your body turns into a flawless machine, with power getting refreshed nonstop. Minutes ticked by, and Ravel finally cracked it. He mastered every internal process to the fullest and got his hands on that life-saving skill. Even that wasn't enough. He couldn't keep meditating, but he forced himself to push through, because the whole point of this training wasn't stillness at all. It was getting his circulation running. Breathing is just a side effect. Then consciousness starts slipping away, but trust me, the payoff is worth every second. Even with pain screaming in his body and exhaustion dragging him down, the boy gritted his teeth, forced himself up, and sat before the flame demon again. This time, his breathing finally steadied. The father watched every detail, then cut the training short, and boom, he suddenly tore his arm. A lightning-fast slash blew the magical flame apart. His meditation was finally complete, but this wasn't the finish. It was only the start of the next trial. Now Ravel had to skid, twist, and dodge his father's brutal strikes, relying on every ounce of agility he had. Because in the world of demons, pain, screams, and suffering are the fuel of true power. But if you truly see yourself as a demon, you don't just react. You cackle, grin, and ride the rush of your own terrifying power. Aiden didn't stop for a second, and he dragged his own son into hours of non-stop fighting. But when it was over, Ravel didn't feel tired anymore, because something inside him had finally shifted. At dawn, when the hut was finally ripped to pieces, Ravel unlocked demonization at last, and his father pressed a sword into his hands, a gratitude gift that felt like a vow. He told him to dive into the wilderness for real combat practice, because it's only when the danger is real that you level up for good. Ravel blurted an apology to his mom for the sudden trip, and she just nodded like she already knew, then jumped in to help pack everything up. After he said his goodbyes, he was finally ready to hit the road. He thanked his parents for everything and vowed he'd be back. And while his mom fretted because he had that rare, unusual gift, she still believed he'd make it. He sank back into memories of the last time he'd stood in that temple, gearing up for war before God, back when his village was tiny, yet the temple itself rose huge and stunning. These temples popped up everywhere in the world, and this was where the big talents got announced. Every resident's future hinged on what they were handed next. Aiden told me about his world travels, meeting people who pushed themselves past their limits, even when their talent just couldn't keep up. And yeah, he admitted that in the past, he'd mocked them with laughter. But then he changed his mind, because his son had tapped into demonic power so fast it scared him, like he might really have endless potential. And when his mother broke down in tears, he rushed to comfort her. From this day forward, Ravel is about to collide with a whole world of people, soaking up new knowledge at every turn. Because one day, his parents dare to dream that he'll become the strongest on Earth, so they cling to his future and put their hope in him. Out on a lonely road miles from any village, a cart thundered forward, while the girl was screaming with pure terror as a monstrous, ferocious thing lunged right behind her. Death felt inevitable, until his companion proved to be the brave Ravel. With zero hesitation, he yanked his sword out and sprinted straight into the fight. A bolt of lightning crashed down, and the monster's head flew clean off. That was the same kind of training her father had promised her. Later, back in the tavern, the girl heard a story and stared in disbelief at the timing, because Ravel didn't just seem unusual. He felt like he had too much on the universe's radar. She stared at him in awe because with one brutal blow he wiped out the orc, and that was terrifyingly impressive. She wanted answers, but Ravel was already rushing off, not ready to talk. The girl clocked the dirty, blood-soaked clothes on him, but the boy didn't even blink. He didn't care about the stink at all. Laura handed him fresh clothes, and they ended up being the crown jewel of her whole store. Her name was Laura, and she wasn't just any seller. She was a member of the Merchants' Guild. Then she swept up the trophies and leaned in. Those orc horns are gold, because you can sell them for big profit and even trade them for top-tier armor. Even with everything stacked against him, Ravel still can't sell them alone. Only guild members can. Laura stepped in to help, and it wasn't pity, it was her thank you for saving him. Ravel refused to get tangled in trade talk and slipped away, until the girl offered him a ride straight to the city of Estoni. The boy figured he could finally catch his breath in the carriage and master fresh spells with wisdom, so he nodded and agreed. The mountain road spat them out onto a flat stretch where the city of Lipsel sprawled wide, roaring with life, and it was way bigger and louder than Ravel ever imagined. This stop was a lifesaver for travelers and traders, and as he headed toward Labyrinth City, the boy plotted to crash through even more settlements like this before he finally arrived. The folks here were loud and bright-eyed, cheerfully trading gossip and fresh news in the taverns, pounding back strong beer like it was fuel. This time, everyone buzzed about the legend of the guy who wiped out a giant orc all by himself, and they were practically begging for every last detail. Ravel said it straight. To unlock that kind of power, you've got to drain every last drop of magical energy first, and that grind takes a brutal amount of time and effort. Everyone leaned in as he preached about training his body, muscle work, brutal workouts, and hundreds of push-ups every single day. Because sure, it feels impossible at first, but once time passes, it clicks and turns into a habit. Ravel laughed and claimed it was all just a big prank, saying the real training was happening at his father's martial arts school. Yet the crowd couldn't stop staring, hanging on his every word. The tavern doors snapped open, and a weird stranger burst into the hall, his eyes locked on the real mystery. Who the heck actually took down that orc? Everyone instantly pointed at Ravel, and the bald man barreled straight into him, begging him for help like his life depended on it. Bloodthirsty bandits had moved into nearby caves, and they weren't just stealing. They were raiding the town, gutting the supplies, and dragging everything toward collapse. The man was horrified, begging anyone for help, because if the city vanished, it would spell doom for every living thing around it. Ravel slammed the request down. He was rushing, and he had zero plans to tangle with the mess of some unfamiliar city. He urged them to hire mercenaries who could crush those bandits, only to learn every last warrior was already wiped out, and the mayor was pinning everything on the hero who just defeated Orkshalem. Laura burst into the conversation, shoved a gold coin into Ravel's hands as a reward, and sweetened the deal with a fast carriage that would whisk him to the right place once he finished the job. For one measly gold coin, you could buy a whole month of living, and a blazing horse and carriage could shave the trip down hard. But the boy just stared, stunned, because he couldn't wrap his head around it. Why was it that expensive? Turns out this city is a money printer for traders. One lonely coin feels like nothing, because if prices crash, people can lose fortunes. Then Ravel finally got why Laura was doing this, and when he agreed to help, he knew one thing. For a mission this deadly, he'd still pay a tiny price. With the wisdom skill, he dug up the truth on those bandits. Usually they swarmed in packs and ambushed him, since their strength was sorely lacking. These folks weren't given much of a chance. Society cast them aside. So a lot of them crashed straight into crime, and Ravel got it on a deeper level because he'd lived that nightmare too. Ravel tossed aside the bandits' motives. What mattered was timing. They struck out of nowhere, so he used that surprise and slipped through the night, knocking them down one by one without a sound. He refused to spill a drop of blood, so he left the sword behind. The bandits never saw the night assault coming. Before they could even react, the first one got hit with Ravel's raw power. He fought to resist, but Ravel slipped the dodge perfectly. And then, for the first time, he activated body enhancement, delivering a razor-precise strike that landed like a knockout punch. The fearsome bandit crumpled to the ground, and right then it hit you. He wasn't nearly as terrifying as he was trying to look. As Ravel pushed deeper into the cave, he tore through enemies one by one, and pure confidence surged in his chest, like training his father had talked about, echoing in his mind. Just when he was about to finish the cleanup, the darkness exploded. Something slammed into him with a weapon, and it was the leader, way stronger than every single one of the others. The giant, furious bandit roared that the boy had wiped out his whole gang and crushed every last one of his plans. Ravel snapped that he didn't kill. He only stunned him, and that shocked the leader, who immediately warned, "Keep pulling your punches and you'll die." The leader's strike slammed into the scene, forcing Ravel to scramble and dodge. But the enemy kept coming, refusing to quit. His blade was massive, and then his muscles ballooned in an instant, blasting his strength into pure, superhuman territory. He claimed he had the best swordsman gift, right on par with the Royal Guard Knights. So Ravel was stunned. If that was true, why was he a criminal? The leader erupted into laughter. He'd trained for ages, yet still got bored, and suddenly stealing and killing felt way more fun than anything else. Ravel spat that he was a real scoundrel, but the thug only chuckled and swore he'd crush that insolent kid. A brutal assault erupted. Blows crashed down back to back, and not a single opponent could survive that kind of fury. But Ravel walked away totally unhurt, then leaned in close and teased the enemy, calling their moves a premiere show. The leader was left slack-jawed. This guy was weaving out of every single attack. His punches were flying faster and landing sharper than even Carlo's, and you could tell Ravel's body enhancement and magical power had surged way beyond before. So yeah, every second of his training paid off, because he used to be called a weakling, and now he shattered expectations. Finally, he snapped into action. Those brutal punches to the face staggered the enemy out of commission. The leader staggered, then crumpled toward the ground, and Ravel couldn't believe it because he never saw a win this fast coming. He told the enemy to stand up and keep fighting, but just as he said it, Laura burst in and demanded to know why he wanted that. The merchant couldn't believe it. He showered Ravel with praise for wiping out an entire gang of robbers all by himself. The boy stared in shock at why she was there, but she just flashed a grin. These bandits were wrecking every merchant in town, then swiping the most valuable treasures they could get their hands on. Now Ravel finally saw the truth. She wasn't just wandering, she was racing straight for that cave to grab the hidden treasures inside. Her plan totally crushed expectations. She didn't just pull it off, she made sure every merchant walked away owing her. The girl dove into the loot, digging for something that mattered more than anything, and just minutes later she nailed it. Joy lit up her face as she proudly shoved a tiny wooden cage into Ravel's hands, and inside sat a playful little dragon-like creature. The bandits got rounded up and shoved straight into the guard's hands. Ravel pocketed a gold coin plus a carriage pulled by a horse, and Laura walked away with exactly what she came for. Then the tiny dragon snatched and swallowed a ridiculously rare ingredient. Boom! Panic hit the girl, and Ravel couldn't even figure out why that moment was supposed to be a disaster. He said the baby couldn't understand a thing yet. Then Laura snapped back that this ingredient was insanely rare and mattered a lot for the guild. She admitted she was meant to hand it over right after the job, then she'd be hailed as a hero. But now that chance is shattered. That ingredient could have powered a royal dish, and the next one won't show up for 100 years. Of course, Ravel wanted to fix this mess with the ingredient, so he just said, "Let's buy it." But turns out it costs at least 5 platinum coins, and yeah, 1 platinum coin is worth 100 gold. The boy froze in disbelief. If he was going to earn that kind of money, he'd have to wipe out at least 500 criminal organizations. But where in the entire country would he even find that many? Laura stared into the distance and decided to dig up a new plan. Right then, she smirked and proposed paying off the debt with her body. Then she saw Ravel's reaction and snapped, "No, I mean hiring you as a guard for the city of Vemen." It was a huge trading city packed with guilds and shops, and it sat right on the road to Ravella, so the escort didn't have to change a single thing in their plans. The boy explained it plainly. This job would cost exactly 5 platinum coins, and Laura only smirked because her guild had a mountain of influential loaded merchants backing it. And lately the monsters have gone feral. Something like this hasn't happened in years. So food is rotting and everyone's terrified to move supplies. But right now, she swears the timing is perfect. Buy up everything that's spoiled for a few coins, then haul it into Valsia, where the prices have exploded and the payoff is huge. Ravel wasn't shocked. This girl could carve a win out of the worst disaster imaginable, and he had to admire it because that kind of chaos wasn't just trouble. It was prime time for massive investments. After a moment of deep reflection, the boy finally nodded. Then Laura pushed again, asking if she could trust him with her life, and Ravel swore with absolute certainty that he would do everything in his power to protect her. Fighting brutal monsters and getting stronger was exactly what he needed. Then they locked eyes, shook hands, and sealed the deal. Then Laura snapped it into focus. Since Ravel isn't a merchant, he has to sign a subjugation contract, or the guards will snatch that little dragon and brand him an unregistered monster. He couldn't believe she hadn't said it sooner. Then Laura just burst out laughing. "I forgot." And sure enough, no contract meant no entry into the city. Ravel leaned down and asked the little dragon if he wanted to sign the contract, and the baby nodded fast, while the chubby companion kept muttering through gritted teeth that everyone here had officially snapped. This subjugation skill doesn't get handed out by fate. It only unlocks after you willingly bond with a monster, and you can only learn it when the city's system already has the right talent waiting. The sage's records spell out the rules to get this skill, but Ravel can't shake the doubt. Are those rules really still true? Or did something change while everyone else looked away? The contract isn't happening unless you've got telepathy, and if you can't tap into that skill, nothing in it will function. To use telepathy, you have to fire it up with pure will, pushing your magical energy straight from you to your partner, and you'd better know how to circulate magic first. Ravel wondered if the ones with demonic power coursing through their veins could pull off something like this even without any of the usual rules. With all that swirling in his head, he steadied his focus, though he had no clue if he could pull it off. And then, out of nowhere, Laura's scream tore through the air. "Monsters are coming." Again, everything felt like it snapped off the rails, and Ravel stared at her own decision, still replaying that bandit attack in her head, not able to figure out why she'd chosen this path. So yeah, they promised him a reward, but Laura still proved she was insanely skilled with that cart, and the speedy horse helped them smash through the monsters and get away. They'd finally slipped free, then they crashed into a forest to rest, because with only 1 day left until Vimania, that contract had to be signed ASAP. Laura told him, "Stay by my side all day, and at night, you'll train for the contract." She didn't get why those silly rituals mattered, but Ravel demanded she take them seriously. The girl pressed him again, so her understanding was right. His real target was the city of Flapar, but why was he guarding that tiny dragon with such fierce, unshakable intensity? Laura was racing against the clock, so she couldn't stop to question the mayor about why this dragon mattered. Ravel stepped in and said he'd sworn to protect it, and now he had to keep that promise. If that contract has to get signed, he'll handle it, no questions. Then the guy turns to Laura and asks what her main goal is. But the girl never answered. She just stared in pure awe as Ravel sparked the flames with magic right in front of her, and she couldn't shake the shock that he had power like that. Ravel stayed calm and asked what they'd eat, because this was their last meal before hitting the city, but Laura's mind had already flown way past dinner. She stared in pure shock. She'd never seen someone juggle magic and brawl with nothing but bare hands, because only the chosen can awaken it. Ravel, though, kept things humble. He didn't brag about his fire skills, he just ground for hours until he finally mastered them, and that dedication hit the girl even harder. Ravel leaned in and asked if the girl thought he was mocking her, and Laura snapped back that he wasn't laughing at all. He had massive potential and skills that were off the charts. Then the boy snapped back to Anna, this unstoppable powerhouse who'd landed an insanely rare gift and could take down 100 enemies all by herself, leaving everyone at the Academy of Heroes in total shock. Ravel told her, "I promised I'd become stronger than you and protect you no matter what," so he had to push his training harder than ever and level up again. Jealousy flickered in Laura's chest as she wondered if Anna was his true beloved, but Ravel dodged the question and rushed back to hammering out the contract with the dragon. He tried to fuse his magic with the little dragon, craving the perfect connection, but it blew up in his face. Their magical waves wouldn't line up, and only by shifting the frequency could they even try to merge. To cast magic, you forge a tight stream of power first, then carefully widen it step by step. This is the magic flow blueprint that can lock different beings together. Ravel steadied himself and started weaving magic energy with the dragon's power. Just don't mess up. Then the dragon erupted into a scream, and Ravel begged everyone not to disturb him, because forging a telepathic link takes ruthless focus. All that struggle paid off. After just a few minutes, the surge finally steadied, and then it hit Ravel like a punch. The dragon wasn't only screaming, it was warning him. A monster crept in behind him. Then Ravel snapped into action, leaped up, and slammed straight into it. Fear sliced through him, but he couldn't back down. This monstrous tree colossus was already towering over his head. Ravel lunged for a torch to burn the creature, but the dragon yanked him back, because deep inside the tree, he heard a girl's desperate cries. The little dragon yanked at its bindings, and Ravel sliced the rope in a heartbeat. Then the baby bolted straight for the tree, its branches gnashing like they wanted blood. He fearlessly tore through the room looking for Laura, and Ravel couldn't help but grin as the new companion spotted the sound's source in a flash. Laura was pinned hard in the branches, totally unable to move. So Ravel shot in at once, slashing through the tangled limbs with a heavy blade to get to her. The monster took the hits and crumpled, slamming straight through the tree until it shattered into splinters, blasting debris and razor-sharp branches everywhere. Laura thanked Ravel for saving her, but the boy insisted the real credit belonged to the little dragon too, because it was the dragon that spotted her first. The girl ran her fingers over the baby with tender care, thanking him from the bottom of her heart, and all he did was softly purr back, content as a happy kitten. In the end, Ravel finished the ritual, reached out through telepathy, and forged a brand new contract. Now the dragon had officially chosen him as its companion, and the boy, Kaya, named it himself, and the little creature loved that name instantly. It was time to move on. Ravel still couldn't shake the guilt. He never noticed Laura vanished or the attack, and it haunted him. So afterward, he swore he'd finally stay sharp and pay attention. Meanwhile, Laura clung to those prophetic words. She had to meet the owner of Diligence, the one who would fire her path to huge success. As Ravel swung that blade, blazing magic flaring from his hands, and even managed to tame a dragon, doubt finally got crushed, because it had to be him. If the deity's words are true, then this boy is the key to her future, and she still has no clue how that's going to happen. Right then, the goddess fixed her gaze on Ravel and warned him, "This road won't be easy, not even close. And if he doesn't go all in, Anna will die." Ravel set out to see Mr. Colt, then found out the guy had been holed up in his office for ages, buried in black magic. Once Colt got the talent, he went all in, devouring every bit of knowledge as fast as he could, and his aura started roaring louder and louder with each passing moment. Yeah, he straight up landed the sorcerer's ultimate prize, the Sage skill, a power that unlocks any knowledge and turns him into a walking encyclopedia. Meanwhile, the friends finally rolled into Vimania, the biggest trading city in Tyria, where every guild left its mark, and the cult's ancient heritage was guarded by the state itself. The second they rolled up, Laura bolted straight for the trading company, while Ravel and Kaya, map in hand, started hunting for a hotel. And their jaws dropped at the sheer scale of it. The city streets roared with crowds. Ravel's stomach tightened, so he darted into a quieter alley, while little dragon Kaya flinched, terrified they'd get lost. He strode forward like he owned the street, until he nearly stumbled over a few girls who were clearly local prostitutes, hunting for a generous customer. It was an entertainment quarter packed with everything for gambling souls, and when this weird-looking little boy showed up, the girls, who were used to nothing but rough guys, couldn't take their eyes off him. Ravel and Kai hated it here from the second they stepped in. Every corner reeked of greed and contempt, and it kicked up a nasty anxiety in their guts. Right beside the girls, their guards turned out to be real bandits, and the second they spotted Ravel, they lunged to rob him and auction off the little dragon for a fortune. They swaggered into that tiny street like it was their throne, already picturing how they'd corner the boy and snatch his stuff. Ravel never planned to submit. He blasted forward with a brutal strike and dropped one of the attackers cold, and in that tight passage it was even simpler than fighting out in the open. But those attackers wouldn't back down. They surged back in again and again, while Ravel dodged like a blur and urged them to retreat before their bodies hit the ground for good. The bandits only burst into laughter, while the girls threw themselves into pleading, begging them to stop and not spark a fight right there in the street. The attackers were ruthless, and the beatings kept coming over and over. The chaos erupted so loudly that nearby passers-by charged into the narrow alley. Ravel snapped into defense, parrying attack after attack like it was nothing, and one of the local girls got so impressed she tried to thank him with seduction, only for him to shut it down hard. Right then, when the girl pressed against him, a new figure burst into view, a young sorceress who'd been pulled in by the chaos. Her eyes widened at what she saw, and she swore she'd end this violence right now. While Ravel tried to tell her he'd been attacked too, the locals were already breaking and running. Then the witch hurled an air spell that blasted through the street and smothered the whole place in swirling force. Ravel realized that kind of magic, trapped in a tight space, would obliterate every shop nearby, so he snapped his focus shut, cut off the flow of magic, and dug into his training. He actually pulled it off, and that totally shocked the sorceress, because she couldn't wrap her head around how the stranger tamed that spell without any special tool. Ravel snapped restraining magic to pin her in place, and just like that, an older man materialized behind her and shouted at the girl to stop. It was none other than Mr. Colt, brimming with wisdom and guarding ancient secrets, and he snapped a warning. Don't you dare use that kind of magic in the city. The boy slammed right into him and even stopped the spell with his bare hands. Proof he had a massive, bottomless stash of magical power. Colt demanded the guy's name, and Ravel shot back his introduction without even pausing. The magician warned that if Ravel hadn't stepped in, everything would have turned catastrophic, yet the girl snapped that it was all provocation. Ravel shot back, reminding her again he was the one who got attacked first. Mr. Colt didn't even ask for the details. He just swept Ravel to his estate and promised him a mind-blowing welcome, and that young man couldn't believe his luck. Ravel flashed a warning, time was running out, but Colt grinned and promised he'd gladly greet the guests, so they pressed on. Laura wasn't happy about this meeting, and the moment Ravel caught their vibe, he knew they already knew each other, and that something must have gone down between them. Colt's estate was outrageously beautiful, and just minutes later they were already inside. Ravel staring at someone who's clearly cut from a rare, elite cloth. Laura leaned in and told me the truth. Colt Vaminia is the heir to a wealthy dynasty that founded this city, and that's exactly why he's swimming in money. Tucked into that huge room, Colt launched into a story about a rare book he'd just gotten. Yet his gut told him it might not be real. Ravel asked if Colt had read it yet, and Colt shot back that he was just getting to it, while Laura's eyes glittered at his confidence, telling him to focus on his own disgust, even though she admitted he had rare talent. Ravel couldn't wrap his head around why that regular trader was acting so bold with the estate owner. Then Laura cut in. Colt only recognizes magic, and he even snatched that book without the merchant's permission. He thought clinging to human rules would never uncover magic's real secrets. Then Laura pushed him to go miles away, chasing true sorcery, and Ravel blew up in rage until she calmly asked, "So tell me, with Colt having the power of a whole city, why isn't he already in the Academy of Heroes?" Ravel finally clocked it. Mr. Colt's talent was top tier, same as his friend S. Wanda then spilled the truth. Mr. Colt had set his sights on the Academy of Heroes, but he ditched it and chose a tougher path instead, training himself for the role of heir. Colt admitted that even his refusal shocked them, because the Academy of Heroes doesn't play games with no's. But somehow they still made peace with it, even as Ravel refused to believe any of this strange new world. Lara stayed restless. Why would Colt refuse to train if he wasn't even aiming to become the heir? Then she uncovered the real reason, the one that went way deeper. Mr. Colt pressed Ravel about his talent, and Ravel shrugged, saying he's just a wizard. Then Colt realized those powers were exactly what let him smash Lana's magic cold, so Colt couldn't help but praise his unstoppable mastery. Finally, Ravel snapped and told the truth, because Dylan wasn't just his choice, it was his real talent from the very start. When the kid heard that, Colt closed in fast, so close it scared him to death. Turned out, the boy had already been hearing rumors about the guy who was supposedly going to inherit Dylan's talent. Mr. Colt still remembered that night when God himself handed him his gift and warned him he'd meet a man with the talent of diligence unless he headed to the academy. He was meant to teach him magic, so Ravel sat up, listened hard, and immediately grilled him. "So what are you doing next?" Colt didn't hesitate for a second. He announced he'd set off on a journey with Ravel because side by side, they could push their magic studies even higher than ever. Lara burst into the conversation and announced she'd be traveling with Ravel too. The boy flinched in surprise. She hadn't shown a shred of interest before. Colt only shot him a warning: don't try to read Lara. As a trader, she'll do whatever it takes for profit. If she wants to get close, it's gotta be for her own selfish reasons. Lara's cheeks flared red, but she couldn't find a single thing to say back. Ravel finally realized this. Sure, Lara's cunning is scary, but his own skill and brutal hard work are the real victories, and together they'll stack up knowledge and wealth. When the girls started to panic, Ravel leaned in and offered, "Let's travel together." He made sure she understood magic matters, but rules matter too, and a solid team trade could only help. And even though Lara's ridiculously greedy, life keeps putting lessons in her path day after day. While Kaya can't help wanting to stay close, because she always hooks him up with his favorite almonds. When Colt asked if the guy was gonna sell his little dragon, Lara shot back with fierce indignation. She wasn't letting that happen, because Kaya was her real friend. Everyone was stunned, because for Larry, money had always come first, no questions asked. Yet Lana fought back, refusing the shared trip, insisting it was plain wrong for someone so wise to ride off with strangers. So how do you throw away an inheritance and walk out of the academy for some shady alliance? Colt didn't budge for a second. He swore to Lana and told her to handle everything while he was gone. At that exact moment, Lana felt something wild. Colt's magic hit her like a spark, made her blush on the spot, and somehow she could even see herself from the side. Colt apologized to the guests, then cut them off with a "I need to step away," and nobody could figure out what he was really up to, while Lana couldn't shake that eerie gut feeling. Once the girl finally snapped back to herself, she blurted out a vow to back Mr. Colt all the way and handle every last bit of the paperwork. Yet Ravel couldn't shake the feeling that magic had her strings. Colt confirmed it. He just siphoned one thought straight out of her mind, and with heirs who refused the inheritance forced to leave the house, that rule could finally be used. Ravel already knew psychic magic packs a brutal punch. Those moves are insanely complicated, so he pressed Colt hard. "Are you really sure this is your choice?" The more the estates and trade guilds got richer, the more fights erupted. He laid it out plain and said Lana can wriggle into a compromise, even if she's not perfect. Lana, the kind-hearted aristocrat, patrols the streets and hears ordinary people's stories. Then it hits her hard. Nobody wants to live in poverty. Colt snapped that he's from the main branch of the family, while Lana is stuck in the younger line. And those stupid rules say she's forbidden to inherit the main bloodline. Ravel shot the idea out. Maybe they should break the rules. Colt nodded like there was no turning back, because this mind magic doesn't just hit the estate, it punishes anyone who gets in the way. The road ahead stretched forever, but Ravel straightened up and vowed to push through to the very end and snag the title of Grandmaster. Right then, the joyful maidservants burst in and announced the journey was set. Right down to those black magic books Colt hadn't even gotten around to reading. Ravel stared in disbelief at their devotion, and told Colt he was a real master of psychological manipulation. And Colt just grinned and confessed he'd finally pulled off a mental attack for the first time. He'd only just stumbled across that deadly method in an ancient book. Lana caught the whole conversation and asked Colt if he'd let her use psychic magic on her, and Colt just gave her a slow, thoughtful reply. She had no clue how any of it actually worked. Ravel got it. Sure, it sounded sinister, but sometimes those tactics are the price you pay to win. His grind built real peace, tough strength, and rock-solid confidence, and when that hit with wisdom, it became the road straight to absolute power. Fueled by inspiration, Colt urged, "No more waiting, let's hit the road together." Because when you grind side by side, you can pull off something truly incredible. Ravel jolted the memory of his messed-up magic structure and pressed Colt for his take. He answered, "Of all the sorcery theories I've studied, nothing matches, except the lost magic stories people only whisper about in legends." Colt couldn't take his eyes off Ravel's rare skills and begged, "Tell me more," not realizing that ancient magic was already stirring inside him, because right now he was just learning and he was killing it. Once they ditched the city, their journey exploded into pure joy and wild adventure. Then they ran into monsters, and that's when the real training kicked in. Before any real threats even showed up, Colt and Ravel pored over magic together, swapping what they knew like it was priceless, while Lara and Lana clicked fast on shared topics, and Kaya soaked up the warm, friendly vibe. Labyrinth City was pure danger, where the desperate flocked in packs to prove, claw by claw, that they had what it takes. Then, boom, a massive labyrinth exploded into existence, twisting its shape non-stop and birthing magical monsters, and only one guy, the satyr, managed to crawl back alive, and richer than ever. Before you even set foot there, you've got to pick your guild, period. Lara promised she'd help you choose, but you'll still have to commit on your own, and Colt made it crystal clear. Don't trust Lara, because only he knows the real truth. Suddenly, a long-eared girl materialized out of nowhere and begged to join her guild, claiming it was the best there is. Lara shut her down immediately. When you see someone getting anxious, you realize this guild is too small to pull in the strong, so you better back a powerful structure with real prospects. But that girl with the sharp ears slammed her point home. Only her guild forges real sword masters. Colt found it hilarious, and Ravel was instantly intrigued by the idea. Then Lara cut in and warned him. There are other ways to get stronger. The stranger told her this. Inside her guild, you don't need raw talent. You get forged instead, spirit and body pushed past their breaking point. So yeah, that's exactly why most people can't survive it. Ravel still pushed for one last look, but Lara swore it was a dead end. Then Colt snapped, turn right. They burst into the enormous guild building and gawked at how massive it was. Colt stared in disbelief. His premonition had betrayed him, plain and simple, while Lara seethed with rage, snarling. How does a guild this worthless even get a structure like that? But inside, everything went dead silent, hollow as empty space, so the girl bolted straight to the only man she knew. Rage burned in her because her father didn't even care, and every time people were watching, shame crushed her chest. While Ravel stood there stunned, staring at this twisted idea of family and thinking, how are they even related? The Fox father claimed the student count shot up this year, but the girl cut in, she's only 12. Colt froze, staring like, wait, what is going on here? The man warned, every newcomer hits a wall and bolts. Nobody wants to leave their comfort zone or wrestle with stress. Then buzzed out of his mind. He bellowed Aiden's name, the student he bragged about like he owned the sky, and Ravel instantly froze. Colt clocked the shift in everyone's faces and demanded to know what was happening. Ravel shot back. Aiden is his father's name, could be a coincidence. But that hammered old man was already hooked. With insane agility, he snatched the sword from the boy and started inspecting it on the spot. And the moment he laid eyes on the hilt, he recognized those familiar patterns. Ravel snapped in fury, demanding his weapon back. Then the old man's mind lit up with memories, and he instantly realized the kid in front of him was Aiden's son. He pushed the question again, so it was really the sword master's son. He finally confessed he'd heard about the kid from an old letter Aiden had once sent him. Everyone in the room nearly choked on the truth. Nobody ever guessed Ravel's father was that legendary swordsman who trained right in the village. So yeah, Ravel isn't just an ordinary mage. Ira stared at a brand new future, while Bonzo, shocked by that sudden run-in, couldn't even guess how many years had slipped since he last spoke to Aiden. Borzo kept the conversation rolling, proudly introduced his daughter, and confessed that he'd once been a demon with a heavy sword, then leaned in and told Aiden they had to remember their friendship. That was the first time Ravel ever heard about this bald giant. Then the offense evaporated instantly, because it totally fit Aiden's vibe. And right then, memories hit him hard, reminding him how wild and incredible that young man had been. Even while they were talking, Borzo clung to that bottle, gulped another mouthful, and went on about Aiden's skills like it was his favorite story. Meanwhile, Ravel had zero idea what was going on. For Borzo, Aiden was the top student. Sharp, powerful, and so gifted it felt like the gods themselves had marked him for greatness. Ravel knew his dad had long buried his gift, and Borzo was clearly trying to light a fire in him to join the guild, because that brutal training had scared students off for ages. Colt said the fall happened because nobody had the grit. Most of them just bolted, unable to match the speed. Borzo agreed in a heartbeat, then proudly pointed out that the guild is still standing. Now the son of the legendary swordsman, Aiden, is here, and suddenly the perfect shot drops into your lap. Walk the same path, smash through the trials, and earn your place in the Brotherhood. Borzo refused to waste a single second, and told Ravel to start training right away to master that special sword technique. But the young man didn't ride that hype. He pushed to delay things a little, insisting he needed to explore other guilds first. Borzo froze, totally thrown off, and Ira begged Borzo to stop rushing her, but Borzo refused. Let her tear through everything first, he thought. Then she'll finally see that every other guild is nothing compared to ours. Ravel finally clocked it. People don't stumble into this labyrinth for nothing. They come chasing experiences you can't get anywhere else, and yet those tiny guilds usually can't pull it off. Rage burned in Ira's chest at her father. Everything she fought for felt totally useless, like her efforts hit a wall, and Colt told her to cut her losses and run because that long-eared girl probably wouldn't let them go. Next, they headed to the Red Wolf Guild, bigger energy than ever, and every adventurer knew it had a top-tier reputation. Everyone piled into the table and nodded. Yeah, this place was awesome, the reviews backed it up and you could feel it. High-ranking scouts were in the room. Turns out your rank decides what you get hit with, simple chores or full-on monster wars that could wipe out entire states. And Colt backed that idea hard, while Lara felt genuinely awful for Ira. Right then, tempers exploded near the entrance as the boys started squaring off, fighting to prove who was the real deal, a true warrior. Ajito, one of them, clocked the newcomers and fired off. So you really want to join this guild? Colt grinned like he already knew the twist was coming, and Ravel felt that familiar sting. This kid oozed arrogance and pride. Ajito pushed the idea of talking abilities, and Colt jumped in first, bragging about his wisdom so hard it actually wowed the other guy. Then Ravel stepped up and pointed out Dylan's raw talent. Ajito had never even heard of something like that, and he snapped, "Yeah, you'd better get out. This guild isn't for people like you." Ravel got it instantly. He was right about that arrogant fool. Ajito declared he only wants the strong, so he'd take Colt, while everyone else should get out of his way. Ravel snapped back that it was smarter to steer clear of someone like that. But Colt snapped that Ajito was pathetic, because real strength isn't about raw talent, it's forged through what you've earned, what you can endure, and the will you never surrender. Ajito was convinced that pure talent decided a person's value, because no amount of training ever could change it. You can't really argue with this. The guilds are straight up waiting for fresh faces, but you can't judge them just by skill alone. Ravel grinned and decided to mess with Ajito. He asked, "What if this so-called weakling beats the great swordsman?" and basically dared him to prove the pathos wouldn't vanish. Ajito's face burned red with rage. His eyes went bloodshot. He was ready to erase from the dust anyone bold enough to challenge him. Suddenly, a girl cat materialized beside him, shooting sarcasm straight at his face, asking if he was picking fights with someone again, and then she called him. While a fool grinned, Ravel's friends just stood there in stunned silence, clueless what was about to hit them next. That promising guild turned out to be a bunch of smug fools, and the moment they got the chance, they rushed to prove themselves, only to embarrass everyone. Ajito tossed in, "No matter what, we'll meet at the newcomers' tournament anyway," and then it hit everyone. Soon as the matches start, we'll all finally see what each of them can truly do. The bard had zero clue about the tournament, until Lizzie, the little cat, leaned in and spilled it. Once a year, the city hosts a novice tourney, and the guild that wins leaves with a reputation that explodes sky-high. After they ditched the guild, the friends practically exhaled on impact, because that place was awful. Still, they all nodded. In this city, power decides everything, and when it comes to leveling up, the Red Wolf is a solid pick. Meanwhile, Ajito was chowing down on a burger, dreaming about wiping out new challengers and proving he's the top dog, until Lizzie snapped, telling him not to get too comfortable. She jabbed a finger at the thin cut on his abdomen and warned that if Ravel wanted, he could have carved him open long before that sword ever reached his neck. So he didn't even see it. He was right on the edge of winning, and that kind of self-confidence was straight-up dangerous. Real power isn't loud arrogance, it's true mastery, and if you don't get that yet, you're still way too green. Ravel thought, if I win this tournament, I'll blow up in fame, unlock real opportunities, and finally get my hands on the kind of challenges that matter. The friends just cracked up. Those plans were too sharp for any regular guy to pull off, but Colt was different. He backed the idea because chasing solitary fame is exactly what he thought would work. After the Red Wolf Guild, everyone walked away with the same vile aftertaste in their mouth, and nobody wanted to set foot there again. The friends marched back to the empty Borzo Guild, but right before stepping in, they grilled each other about what training would bring and what would crush them. Colt clearly didn't want to put in the hard work, yet they pushed him until he finally agreed. And just like that, tournament day finally erupts in full force. Crush-thick crowds shake the main arena, and the charming Kana sweeps in to introduce Sid, the commentator from the Red Wolf Guild, only to reveal he's an S-class adventurer. The hosts fired up the crowd, and the second the start signal blared for round one, you could feel it. This was it. The show was finally here. The guild's top swordsman, Ajit and Ravel step into the spotlight because Ravel has to prove just how powerful his talent really is. Pure, relentless diligence. The crowd erupted in laughter, like, how was a guy with diligence supposed to stand a chance against some high-class swordsman? Lara snapped at everyone, "Shut up, watch." He stared into the arena like it was fate, praying Ravel would win, even as doubt clawed at him, because that opponent was way too battle-hardened. He prayed the boy would win so he could crush that arrogant blowhard. And just like that, the hosts shouted the fight was about to begin. The sound recorders blasted the hosts' voices loud and clear, and the arena instantly went dead silent. Everyone braced themselves for the newcomer's jaw-dropping duel. Just a few weeks ago, on the very first day in the city, their friends threw a full-on celebration to welcome them. The food came out glorious. Every single person raved about the fresh, top-notch ingredients, and that little dragon Q erupted in joyful squeals, gobbling up the tastiest bites like they were pure treasure. Ira's eyes went wide at the beast like first time ever seeing something that wild. Ravel snapped that it was just a cub, that it'd grow up, but naive Ira, without thinking, asked, trembling if she could hug it. In her arms, the little dragon melted instantly. Warmth flooded him, gentleness wrapped around him, and he knew with certainty she was a truly kind soul. That shocked Ravel. Q had never shown emotions like this to anyone before, but the dragon calmly said it anyway. Q was a brilliant expert when it came to souls. Meanwhile, Borzo had downed a few mugs of lemonade and decided it was time for a real, no-nonsense talk. Even though Lara never got to swing into adventure, she crushed it in trading, running the business like a pro and pulling it back from the edge of bankruptcy by sheer skill, then digging through every document until she uncovered the truth. Borzo had quit adventures long ago because of an injury. Even so, Lara cornered Borzo and Yuito and demanded to know what they were best at. Turns out Yuito was a magical archer, and he practically strutted with pride about it. Ravel heard it for the first time, while Colta didn't even blink. Ira grinned and said her talent lets her fire magical bullets dead-on from far away, and her go-to weapons are her twin pistols. Colt demanded a full verdict on the weapon, and Lara shrugged it off as cheap. Ira confessed they couldn't afford anything better, and Ravel swore those pistols were far too weak. Colt then leaned in and demanded to know why Ravel wanted to get stronger when he'd already hit a huge level. So his friends teased that it was all about a girl, but Ravel snapped back, telling them not to invent stories. He started talking about his childhood friend, Anna. She didn't want to fight, yet she dreamed of getting into the Academy of Heroes, so they had to split up, each one praying they'd meet again someday. If Anna joins the Academy, she's getting pulled into the army to become a protector. And Ravel swore he'd grow stronger just to shield her from the brutal horrors of war, leaving the friends completely awestruck by his heartfelt promise. The girls were buzzing with joy, honestly jealous of Anna, because not everyone gets looked after by a guy who truly fights to earn his strength. And for the first time, Ravel finally showed them the real reason. Breathless with excitement, he pushed for special training right now, and every single friend backed him, because all they wanted was to see him become the strongest swordsman. A few weeks flew by, and suddenly it was test time for Agito's new powers. He walked in cocky, ready to prove everything he'd learned since that Red Wolf meeting. Ravel only let out a low grunt. This had to be the new Agito form, that's the only thing it could mean. Yet he watched every move with Lizzie like it was just a trashy performance, and he didn't spill a single plan, he just snapped a warning. "Be careful." Agito flicked his hand like it meant nothing. Reputation didn't matter to him, victory did. Time to shut everyone up and get to the real battle. Hungry for glory, Agito launched a lightning-fast attack. Then Ravel smiled, because every move of his was already read like a map. This time he wasn't going to hold back. He threw everything he had into the fight, but that's exactly what Agito craved. After all, in this arena, death can't touch you, top-tier magic guards everyone inside. Only after the life energy hits zero does the fighter finally admit defeat, and even then, he doesn't die. Because of these rules, every single fighter steps in swinging full force, no fear for their lives. The crowd went wild, opinions tearing the room in two. Some were throwing bets on Agito, while others were shouting for Ravel, even though everyone was quietly putting him at way lower odds. This brawl yanked Ravel straight back to his childhood, sparring with his father in their hometown. Maybe that's why he even made it into the Academy of Heroes, but now he's done copying everyone else's moves. In just a few minutes, Agito realized this simpleton was hiding something sharp, and Ravel promised he'd lay out everything he'd learned. And that wasn't just talk. This training was brutal, and he kept grinding day after day under his friend's watch. Of course, Borzo ran the whole operation and trained like his father. No mercy, just results. While he pushed, Lara sat there, utterly bored, right beside the dragon. Borzo kept drilling one thing into him. No matter what chaos hits, you don't lose your focus. Because hauling that load while you run is the perfect way to build raw strength and lock in self-control. Every step Ravel took hit a wall of resistance. Borzo's gravity magic was brutally, insanely strong. Training drained her down to the last drop, until Ira finally crumpled under the pressure. She was even more sure now that choosing the traitor's path was the right call, not the fighter's. Ravel wasn't about to quit. He clenched his teeth, poured every drop of magic into his next step, and pushed forward, grinding himself onward, because only his diligence kept him from toppling like Ira, while Borzo stood there in silent awe of that stubborn will. But even that wasn't enough. Ravel finally lost control, crumpled to the ground, and Lara sprinted over, panicking. Ravel could cheat gravity with magic and jack up his strength, but his body couldn't keep up in time. He'd lost control completely, and if he wants results again, he'll have to rebuild everything from the ground up. While he hesitated, Colt surged ahead with razor focus. Honestly, you had to respect it. It was crystal clear. Colt fought the pull of gravity with raw, powerful magic of his own, and only a truly top-tier wizard could pull off something like that. Ravel's face twisted in confusion, and Colt snapped. So you're not gonna guard Anna? Picture Borzo charging in. Tell me, how are you even gonna save her? Borzo instantly clocked that Colt was only hyping the guy up and told him, don't turn him into a villain. And it hit. Ravel snapped into action right away. Colt's words lit a fire under his soul, and now, facing Agido in that duel, he felt a fierce surge inside him. Even the crowd couldn't believe it. How was Agido's so-called unstoppable assault missing every single target? People swore Agido was the deadliest swordsman and hunter around. He always had the upper hand. But this time he couldn't land the hit. Everything in him snapped, and his cool started to slip. Impatience swallowed him whole, and he just wanted the weird fight to be over. This was exactly what Ravel had been waiting for. One slip, one loss of balance, and boom, pure opening for a devastating counterattack. While Lara and Borzo leaned in, eager, because every bit of it was the payoff from their hard training. This technique was meant for monster fights, so what makes Agido any different? The plan they chose was flawless, yet Lara still couldn't shake her worry. Ravel dodged like lightning, snapped into a counterattack, and kept getting even more agile with every clash, sharpening his combat edge in real time. Everyone got it instantly. This dude could swing at any moment, burning next to no magic, and his hits were so unpredictable they felt like a nightmare you couldn't dodge. The crowd erupted with pure hype, because he had the perfect grip on life and an absurd amount of magical power, all carved from Diligence's rare talent. Sid and Kanna couldn't wrap their heads around it. How did their predictions miss when the Red Wolf Guild's best swordsman was getting beaten right in front of everyone? But Agido, who'd always learned to swallow defeat, stood up anyway, locked in on finishing the job, even if it meant losing everything in the end. Death hung in the air. He praised his opponent's grit because that slow drain tactic was finally paying off. Ravel demanded if it was disgraceful to get beaten by a newcomer. Agido snapped that it was humiliating, but he made it clear the fight wasn't finished yet. Ravel already owned the whole battlefield. His opponent's focus slipped, and now all that was left was landing the final, crushing hit. Then it hit right in the back of his head out of nowhere. Even a seasoned swordsman reeled, and the whole crowd went dead silent in pure shock. Everyone snapped to attention, because it wasn't just fire, it was magic. Nobody even had a heartbeat to blink when the fireball suddenly appeared, and the impact of that move was straight-up breathtaking. To carve out the room for the strike, every move had to be planned down to the last detail, and Ravel outplayed his opponent, forcing them to back away just far enough. He wasn't about to let this chance slip away. He poured everything he had into his stance, then readied the deadliest attack he could unleash. For him, this wasn't just progress, it was a fiery leap toward the real mission, getting stronger no matter what for his duty. Then Ravel landed the final, decisive blow. Agido's life energy hit zero, and the entire arena exploded in applause. The hosts declared the winner, and the crowd gasped, because the top swordsman got wiped out in minutes, decisively. Lara and her friends didn't even try to hide how impressed they were. Now there wasn't a single doubt. Ravel had officially become the tournament's favorite, but his magical power had hit a dangerously low point. He shook off the blow in seconds and tore through his second opponent, the Crown Sword Guild's swordsman, Oscar, and in round 3 he crushed Gold, the Flying Axe Guild's axe warrior. After crushing those wins, his name echoed like thunder. He was stepping into the 4th round, fueled by one burning goal: become champion. Everyone was freaking out with joy, because just recently nobody bought Ravel's hype, but now they'd seen it for themselves. His relentless grind had forged him into a terrifying opponent. Next up was a charming magical huntress. She'd sailed through the previous fights untouched, not a single scratch on her. When she stepped in with 2 pistols blazing, people couldn't help but stare, because everyone just knew she was about to be the one to take down Ravel. Remote weapons were a terrifying threat, but Ravel was ready to take them head-on, and the hosts solemnly declared the battle officially underway. A week before the tournament, Ira's fury flared. Her prized pistols blew up mid-shot, and she couldn't believe it. Lara finally told her the truth. The weapons couldn't handle the magical charges, the quality was simply too low. Ravel couldn't shake the dread that something might have happened to that girl, and he urged them to delay the training right away, convinced his gut was screaming danger. Lara pushed for new weapons, but Ira snapped back. Those foreign pistols cost a minimum of 100 gold, and her trusty old pair. That was a gift from her father, a master from overseas. Nobody wanted to foot the bill for the repairs. They'd cost a fortune. So Ira snapped into action, because winning the tournament was her one shot to earn cash for brand new weapons. Still, even with everything going on, the huntress couldn't shake the fear of losing. Lara hurried to get Ravel to tell Uria that there had to be another way. And Ravel stepped up, swearing he'd build the revolvers himself, like following a recipe, just swapping ingredients for the right materials. Yet Lara burst out laughing and told Colt to jump in. Ravel definitely wasn't handed instructions, but push him a bit and you'll see he can cook up even more weapons, as long as you can get your hands on magical iron. Lara still had a tiny stash left, and she refused to hand it over on a whim. But when Ravel saw that chunk of iron up close, he decided there was zero time to waste. So he unleashed his alchemical skills and set out to forge a weapon for the very first time in his life. The girls stared right through the whole process, and Ravel, fired up by the fantasy of girls with guns, built paired weapons, erotic pistols. First he forged the barrel, then bolted on the handle, and after that he fitted the sight and the curve. When it was done, the heroine couldn't hide her awe because Ravel looked like a full-on master gunsmith. Even Colt couldn't help but be blown away by how he handled magical metal. Anyone paying close attention could clearly see the magic and alchemy were basically cousins. Turns out the metal was way tougher than Ravel ever expected. His own lack of magic stopped him cold, and even though Era doubted it, she still clung to the hope that they'd pull it off. The huntress thanked the boy with real sincerity for his grit, and she couldn't believe he'd actually gone and built a weapon the moment her pistols died. Right then, Borzo, the Red Wolf's leader, came crashing into the scene, and when he heard about Iori's new weapon, he erupted in praise, calling the boy a true son of a great father. Now it's pistol time in the tournament. Perfect chance to prove her aim, and Ira's already planning to stay back and unleash death from a distance. But Ravel got it. If he didn't close in fast, those bullets would slice right into him. He surged forward as Kanna screamed, and the rounds were already skimming the dirt. Because they trained together, Ravel already had Iori's plan in his head. So he scanned her defenses, hunting for the exact weak spot to strike the moment it opened. He darted through the air, slipped past the magic bullets, closed the gap, and drove a brutal strike that sent her weapon skidding from her hands. Then the arena exploded in thunderous applause. Then boom, Ravel hit a wall. He refused to land the final blow, and Kanna shrieked into the mic, totally clueless, while Ira sank into pure despair. Ravel leaned in with total confidence. Ira can do so much more. She just has to learn how to handle pistols the right way. Even without a weapon in hand, she still wielded the lessons her father drilled into her. No matter what happened, she'd fight to the very end. She got it all, but fear still clawed at her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she finally confessed, struggling to believe she could trust herself. Ravel wasn't cocky in the slightest. He just chased his goal with burning focus, knowing hard work matters more than talent. So Ira had to guard her wishes like a lifeline. She couldn't quit, not even when the world stacked the odds against her, because her father had always believed she was stronger than fate. Meanwhile, Lizzie clocked Agito staring into space, and he flat-out admitted he was still dissecting his loss, so he'd never repeat that same mistake again. Cunning Lizzie grinned and shoved the defeat in his face. Agito barely held his emotions in check as he admitted it. He never managed to beat Ravel. Lizzie marveled as Ravel prepared like a beast, dug into Agito's style, and with pure talent plus relentless grit, he clinched the win. Agito exploded with rage. He swore he'd never lose again, and he vowed to grind harder than ever to get stronger. Lizzie realized this hard truth. Losing can rip the blinders off, and when ordinary grit keeps going, it turns into real power. Ravel's whole breakthrough was built on sheer perseverance. He pulled off the impossible, and Lizzie was convinced that beneath everything lurked dark magic, waiting to be shattered. In the arena, Ira finally snapped back to full strength. Those tears dried up and fury surged through her again, and then she crashed straight into the attack. The crowd erupted. She dodged like lightning, struck back with deadly precision, and darted out of danger. Then the tension snapped to full peak. She shoved her opponent back, grabbed the pistols, and unleashed magical bullets with no hesitation. Kana gagged on her own terrified screams, while Borzo beamed, proud as could be of his daughter. Ravel swung his sword and snapped those bullets out of the air at lightning speed, while Ira stayed back and relied on her go-to trick. That exact move sealed her win in the first duel, so when it was Ravel's turn, he already knew how to strike back. Fear surged again, but the huntress didn't stop. She decided to catch her opponent off guard with a lightning-quick shot. Ravel barely dodged in the very last second. But then, bam, something hit Ira like a lightning bolt, and a brutal pain shot through her as the host claimed her with dark, powerful magic, stealing her life force in an instant. Kana kept blurting out every single move, then shouted, "Ravel coming in fast, this is just another step toward yet another win." The second Ravel closed in, Ira snapped her hand up and crushed the trigger, like she was pretending to be helpless just to bait her opponent into a mistake. It was a brutal trick. She feigned exhaustion to catch Ravel off guard, and now the moment finally came to land the final blow. The boy trusted her because, during training, Ira kept collapsing into fainting spells. Yet this time she looked rock solid, like she'd already locked in the perfect moment. But when her finger slammed the trigger, silence crushed the moment, because Ira gasped, "That sound, I know it." And suddenly she remembered exactly where she'd heard it before. At that exact moment it clicked. Ravel had cooked up alchemy again, twisting the pistols so their magic died on the spot. But she didn't flinch. She was going to tear into him with her bare hands. Ravel hit first. One sharp sword strike landed, and that was the turning point. The crowd exploded in applause, and Ira's stomach dropped. It was over. There was no more chance to win. Even after the loss, the girl swore she'd get stronger for next time, and Ravel just nodded, grinning, because he was happy with the fight and ready to wait for the rematch. They clasped hands, and Kana's voice rang out, "That's it, the guildmates' fight is over." And just like that, Ravel takes the win. Mr. Colt wasn't happy for a second. Ravel had climbed that far and even snagged the girl's respect, and that drove him up the wall. He brushed off every friendly tie as pure nonsense, straight-up chains meant to stop him from grabbing the one thing he wanted, power and glory. The maid stumbled on a book about Colt's father's combat skills in the trash, but the boy only shrugged, like he'd already memorized every single page. The maid was furious. You can't just toss books like trash. Yet she still told him, quiet down and start practicing magic instead. Meanwhile, Kana blurted out that the final round was officially starting. Two people nobody thought would even make it to the last showdown were finally face to face, and the crowd went absolutely wild. The crowd thundered with chants, and the host shouted, "Don't you dare miss the tournament's biggest match." In the final bout, the wise Colt faces off against the crowd's obsession, Ravel, this restless newcomer who leans on raw grit, hard work, and endurance to keep pushing forward. Colt caught the tell. Ravel had no weapon in his hands, but the confidence on his face screamed one thing. This time he wasn't just fighting, he was aiming to prove he was stronger. Ravel bared his goal to the world. He would become the strongest, so first he had to smash the sage. Then he trained for what felt like forever, grinding day after day until his body and soul sharpened. Kana figured Ravel would unleash nothing but magic, and that meant one wild, spectacular fight was coming, until Colt burst into a laugh and made it clear he wasn't about to back down. His opponent's swagger made him smirk, but he still had to admit it. Ravel's enthusiasm was something to respect. Colt didn't hesitate. He fired off a fire arrow instantly, aiming the spell straight at Ravel. But the guy twisted out of the way and lunged to blunt that magical blast, saving himself from the worst damage. Kana gasped, "The flame's gone. How is that even possible?" And Colt instantly knew Ravel had whipped wind magic to scatter the whole stream of fire. Even though Colt recognized Ravel as a capable wizard, he still snapped that he was pathetic. But Ravel didn't fold to the provocation. Colt tried to talk him out of it. Ravel's plan was downright insane. He insisted saving someone was pointless. But Colt swore that if they joined forces, all bets were off and they could pull off anything. Ravel refused to betray his dream, because friends and goals aren't junk. They're the fuel that forged his strength. Colt wasn't buying it. Those answers hit a dead end for him. He snapped that he'd stop wasting time on useless people, like Ira and the rest of the guild. That's why Colt fought tooth and nail, to prove Ravel wrong and show her his path doesn't go to nowhere, it leads somewhere. The great sage swung down with a brutal strike, but Ravel jerked out of the way and launched to the side. Then that smug Colt just laughed, clearly pleased with himself. The whole fight kept exploding in intensity, and the crowd in the stands was on the edge of their seats for that one sudden turning point. But even with the chaos flying, nobody got the upper hand. Kana froze in shock. This wasn't some beginner spar anymore. The magic level was way too wild, the kind only battle-tested adventure veterans could pull off. Every minute that slipped by, Ravel felt the pressure crush harder. His strength was draining fast, while the enemy kept firing off spells so powerful they felt unreal. Sage Colt had nearly endless magic in him, and he attacked like a storm, throwing everything with zero strategy. But Ravel wasn't about to fold. Inside, rage boiled as he remembered the fight with Colt over magic, over what really holds power. Colt always told everyone exactly what to study, and what to toss aside, especially mental magic, which Ravel's own experience proved can wrestle control even from the strongest of them. But slapping it into open combat is risky. Once the enemy clocks it, they'll clamp down fast, and the magic will stop hitting as hard. They talked non-stop about magic, but it was obvious their growth plans split at the roots. Colt insisted you should study nothing but ancient spells. Ravel set his sights on mastering every single kind of magic, chasing unlimited power instead of getting stuck in one narrow specialty. Colt thought it was a total waste of time. He'd rather cram all his energy into raw, crushing spells and the magic power that actually matters. He told Ravel to toss the excess and dive straight into the real depth of magic, but Ravel stayed locked on his beliefs and moved with razor-sharp focus. Colt stood there and he stared, no magic spilled off him at all. Maybe Colt had learned to cloak it, all thanks to his hard-earned wisdom and experience. But Ravel wouldn't even entertain defeat. He was all about winning, while Colt kept hammering him with relentless attacks, insisting Ravel could master any magic out there. Colt threw out the old plan. Glowing spheres flared around him, and he braced to unleash a brand new magic blast. The magic blast slammed into Ravel, and a wave of power hit him from every direction, like he just plunged into the middle of a roaring magical storm. Ravel's body buckled, pain slammed into him as he dropped to his knees, while Colt reveled in every second of his advantage. Bozo was fuming. He never saw this coming, even as he grudgingly admitted Colt's strength, while Lar finally snapped the truth. She'd never witnessed a sage this cruel. Ravel clenched through the pain and took the hit head-on, stared Colt straight in the eyes, and swore he was still ready to fight. Colt answered with a cold shrug. He cast an ancient spell, slammed the magical stone into place, and landed the final blow. Now Ravel can only say goodbye to hope. The sage poured every last ounce of magic he had into one crushing burst, then clenched his jaw, because the only question burning in his mind was, would Ravel actually survive it? But Ravel was locked in. He told them, "Don't you dare pull your punches," because every person in this crowd is dying to watch what the great sage can truly do. Colt swallowed the challenge and charged. Then right before he struck, a glowing magical circle snapped into existence in the arena. It was Ravel's trap, set up while Colt was busy moving around. Ravel pulled off a ruthless trick, repeating Colt's magic, but cranking it up again and again. Then slammed the magic circle to life right in the heart of the arena. A furious whirlwind exploded into the sky like a hurricane, ripping through everything in its way. Then the air element answered it with raw, raging force. Even the audience could barely hold still, and right then Ravel's mind flashed back to every moment he'd shared with Colt. While Ravel kicked back with his friends, Colt slipped into the shadows of books, terrified that one day he'd be cast aside, forgotten for good. Ravel read those words and burst out laughing, because Colt was obsessed with magic, and that meant he never, ever underestimated what perseverance could really do. Colt's jaw dropped at his sincerity and he flushed bright red, then finally admitted it. He got it now, Ravel's real motives. Right then, Ravel crumpled to the ground. His magic finally ran dry. Colt actually thought he'd won, but it was nothing more than a planted illusion. It was pure deception. Ravel snapped into a sudden attack, and Colt's jaw dropped, because those weren't just words. It was illusions and psychology working him like a trap. So Ravel tricked him with a tiny pinch of magic, and boom. An illusion so real it fooled his senses, because the real power isn't flashy spells, it's mastering the structure. Even though Colt fought back a little, he finally threw in the towel, no more excuses. And get this, Ravel, just some regular guild guy, straight up outbattled the great sage in a fair, no-cheating fight. The loudest cheer hits when Ravel is crowned the tournament winner. People erupt, the host hypes him up, and his friends are bursting with pride. Borz all shot back to how Ravel's father, Aiden, blended magic with the blade and reached perfection, and he was sure Ravel could walk that same road. A few weeks rolled by, and the city finally slid back into its everyday rhythm. But Agito couldn't shake the sting of that defeat. The city's noise and the market's chaos grated on his nerves. Then a voice snapped his name from right behind him. This was Lauren's trade, and she was happy the updated guild had joined, until Agito stormed over to the bulletin board and immediately started calling out every mistake. Laure thanked her and swore he'd fix everything. Then it hit. After the quest tournament, there were so many things piling up that she never even got a second to catch her breath. She laid out the details, how people were lining up for weapons, armor, and missions, and then she hit the real reason all this chaos was happening, because of one thing. Ravel won the newcomers tournament, and Era, still super popular with those long ears, snagged 5th place, but the irritated Agito exploded forward and lunged at the pile yelling. Right then, Era burst back from another deadly mission and snapped at Agito to apologize for humiliating them. Era snapped out the truth. He lost because he got cocky and totally underestimated Ravel's talent. He thought power was all that mattered, and he couldn't have been more wrong. Agito snapped. He shoved the girls away, refusing to listen to any more talk about his weakness, and just then Lizzie burst into the guild. As the fight raged on, everyone couldn't look away from Colt. He rewired the very structure of magic and forged a brand new class of it. Laura admitted she never in a million years thought someone like Colt could change this much. Then a man with a mustache, probably a noble, stepped up to him. And somehow it all played out exactly like that. Yet Colt wasted no time making it clear he had zero patience for aristocrats, even if you could argue he was a little too biased. The nobleman didn't take offense at all. He swept the young sage into his arms, swore lifelong loyalty, and promised to pour out whatever money it took to fund his education. Lara leaned in, fascinated. Colt somehow had a gift for pulling in exactly the kind of people who could teach you the most important stuff. Meanwhile, Agito couldn't forget what Lizzie could do. She looked like she was coasting, but the moment anyone tried to criticize her, she shut it down fast because she'd already climbed into the Arakid class of adventurers. Lizzie said Agito's been training like crazy so he won't lose again. Then she leaned in and asked, "So where's Ravel right now?" Lara swore that Ravel grinds through sword training day after day, with zero rest, all to carve his way toward flawless swordsmanship. Every day he reenacted battles, pounding that same stone again and again, until each brutal strike only left him hurting with zero progress. And no matter how hard he tried, it didn't leave a single scratch, nothing. Borzo snapped, asking Ravel if he remembered what that stone was made of. Turns out it was orichalcum, mythic metal with near-impossible hardness. It's brutal to forge, but Ravel's father once managed to cut through it. Borzo prized Ravel's razor-sharp gift for reading enemies and ripping open their weak spots, because his tactics were in a league of their own. But what happens when the battlefield is packed with enemies? How do you defend and strike at the same time? We need technology that wipes everything in its path. And yeah, this thing actually exists, the technique called irresistible dissection. If Ravel can master it, he'll go from nobody to the strongest man in the world. Ravel pushed harder, driven by pure grit and real talent, while magic steadily forged his body into something stronger. But the truth was still hazy, and he knew one thing for sure. He had to lock in with maximum focus. Each miss he made flared into pain and drained the strength right out of him, and Ravel still couldn't wrap his head around how his father managed it without magic. But every time he failed, stubborn fire surged even higher, and he swore to you straight up. He'd cut through orichalcum if it took his whole life. Right then, happy Lara burst in to see him. She couldn't wait to tell him she'd just been promoted, but she'd only barely arrived. Ravel was gone, vanished like he'd never existed at all, and the boy was left scrambling to make sense of it. Where the hell did he go? As Ravel spun his gaze around, a wild wave of magical power crashed in from every direction. Then, out of nowhere, a soft, mesmerizing woman's voice drifted into his ears. Meanwhile, a squad of girls was battling a nightmarish monster that ripped through everything in its path, and the clock was ticking down fast. But in the blink of an eye, everything flipped. Anna surged in and slammed into the monster, turning the chaos on its head, and her sudden arrival lit a spark of hope. With Dragon Knight Anna stepping in and the girls locking arms in perfect teamwork, they tore down the monster, and now they're praying they'll rake in those high scores. Everyone was cheering except Anna. She stayed locked in, sensing it wasn't over, like the real danger was still lurking just out of sight. The other girls finally breathed out, insisting there weren't any monsters on the academy grounds, And with that, everyone was itching to sprint to the gym. Like right now. That peaceful calm snapped into pure horror. Something enormous and deadly was closing in, and it was none other than Montecker. A towering monster with a red mane, a lion's head, and 3 rings on its tail. Its hunger for the hunt was pure obsession. Because Montecker was a deadly threat, he got shoved into S-Rank's highest seat. And when S. Luna saw the situation, she bolted, knowing there was almost no chance she'd win. But her escape only fueled Montecora's rage. He felt every move she made, then launched the hunt without a second to lose. The monster lunged in, but thankfully no one got hurt. Still, after that attack, nobody ever felt safe again. The girls, Anna included, felt fear slam into their chests, and they knew they had to bolt, but Anna, she had a whole different plan brewing. She decided to draw the monster's attention and snapped at her friends to bolt, burning with confidence in her own power. Also, the teachers would finally spot her. The moon was absolutely against it, because Anna was about to face the most dangerous monster. But Anna had already started gearing up. Luna fretted over her friend, because hardly anyone could stand against Montecker. But Anna, sweet as she was, carried herself like a real warrior. She knew exactly who she was up against, and she prayed she could stall him just long enough to let the others slip away. Even though Anna was painfully shy, she refused to crumble in front of the academy and her friends. In those heartbeat-stopping moments, she suddenly thought of Ravel, her childhood best friend she finally got to see after 3 long years apart. That fear clutched her chest. She was terrified she'd break her promise, and in the depths of her soul, she begged for forgiveness. And then, boom, Ravel showed up right beside her, and Anna's jaw practically dropped. The guy grinned and told her, "Don't worry, I'm here to protect you." She shoved the monster to the back of her mind and went for a conversation, but Ravel stopped her cold. He insisted she wait, because he had to cash in on his promise right now. Staring down at a monster like that for the first time, he knew there was zero room for error. Because Anna was under his protection, no exceptions. It was the long-awaited reunion of 2 friends who swore they'd walk life's road together again. Because first, they had to survive. Ravel was locked in. He vowed to Anna that he'd hold the line until his final breath, because that was the whole point of his life. A young man once bumped into a goddess disguised as a breathtaking woman, and it didn't even shock him, because Colt had already warned him something like this was coming. The longer he stared at her, the more it hit him. Standing right in front of him was something divine, the kind of power that could rewrite destinies. The goddess shattered the silence and demanded his full attention. She had a message that could change everything. She still grinned, and then she snapped that Anna was in immediate danger. He had to jump in right now. Even the goddess couldn't wrap her head around how a monster like that showed up on the elite academy grounds, and she praised Ravel's courage for it. So she proposed teleporting him straight into the monster's den, and the guy demanded to know why she'd help. She just smirked and said she had a personal reason. The goddess finally admitted she truly cares about everyone in this world, even if she has to keep the balance in check. But she didn't waste a second on speeches. She went straight into action. She told her it was time to go, shoved Ravel toward Courage in the middle of this horror, and reminded him he still hadn't run into Mantecker. And that's how the young hero stood face to face with the monster, shaking with the kind of courage that fights for spirit, not just survival. But every hit he threw bounced off. No scratch, not a single bruise. Because the Manticore's body refused to break, so he knew he'd have to change tactics fast. Anna stared at the battle in pure horror, then gasped as she realized just how flawlessly her friend was throwing magic. Even those magical fireballs couldn't stop what was coming. Ravel felt it instantly, grabbed Anna's arm and urged her to get out, because he couldn't keep her safe and battle the threat at the same time. A tiny dragon named Caillou swooped in to help, promising he'd take Anna with him, because where he came from didn't matter anymore. Now Ravel stood alone before that monstrous nightmare, and with Anna safe in his mind, he locked in, ready to give everything he had. But the Manticore slammed down a brutal hit. Its poison struck instantly and froze his body in place, forcing him to trigger his magic right away. Poison hit him hard, but he kept fighting anyway. This was brutal, and there was no retreat left to even consider. Meanwhile, Anna threw the order out the window and spun back. She knew Ravel would die if she didn't go to his aid. Somehow, she instantly understood the dragon's language, like they'd known each other forever, even though they'd only just met moments ago. Caillou could feel a real connection sparking between them. It felt like they'd been best friends for ages, but there's no time to dwell. Right now, they've got to save Ravel. Anna had no idea how she'd landed in this kind of danger, while Q simply obeyed the master's command and hauled her to a safe place. The dragon admitted it was tearing him up to watch that fight too, But once an order's given, it's non-negotiable, so he told Anna to unleash the power of the night dragon. She realized there was no escape. Now was the moment to blow the lid off her power and race to save the one she loves. At that instant, Ravel fought for his life, dodging and blocking the monster's brutal blows while pouring magic into every strike and racing to conserve his strength. Pain in Borzo's left arm kept raging harder and harder. His limb nearly froze in place, but magic was piling up there, just like Borzo had warned. Ravel figured that if he let the poison spread, he could trigger the unyielding blade. And damn, that choice was risky as hell. He hesitated, torn between risking his life and trying to outsmart the manticore, by acting weak, then striking hard and fast out of nowhere. But that monster never slowed down for even a heartbeat. Every attack slammed in back-to-back, leaving zero time to breathe. And just like that, the manticore slammed on the brakes. Something snapped its focus away, and Ravel finally clawed out a few precious moments of rest. A massive dragon tore out of the sky, towering over the manticore and radiating pure, terrifying danger. Ravel snapped his eyes to his favorite and his jaw dropped because the kid had ballooned into a towering giant. Then Ravel barked, "Use your fire breath." The boy couldn't wrap his head around it. His little dragon had transformed into a full-on monster, and Anna was controlling it. But nobody knew if this move would finally spark Ravel's invincible technique. Anna snapped back and urged him to believe in himself. Even with the giant bearing down, Manticore refused to fold. But Ravel felt his friend's power surge and poured every ounce of magic into the moment. Poison surged through his veins, but he forced it down, biding his time until the perfect moment to trigger the blade's ruthless edge. With his friends rushing in, he finally gets a breather. Then Ravel snaps forward and launches into the attack, sword flashing with a fierce blue glow. The Manticore's first strike sailed wide, and it snapped its tail to counter. Yet Ravel shifted at the last second, perfectly in time. Ravel's next swing ended it. His blade cut straight through the giant clover monster's neck with brutal, unstoppable ease. It blew his friends' minds, and Ravella felt power crashing through him. Because now he wasn't just trying anymore, he was 100% worthy of being crowned the hardest worker in the world. After he crushed the monster and mastered the unbreakable blade, that boy was itching for fresh missions, hungry for his next win. The second the Manticore went down, Ravel vanished in a blink, back to the ones he loves, so fast he didn't even get a single word out. That moment hit like a double punch, pure thrill, then heartbreak. Because the fight was finally done, Borzo helped with the recovery, and Ravel vanished for a few days to rest. Magic saved him, he crushed the poison and cleansed his body, but his left arm stayed twisted and numb, and only time could bring it back. Meanwhile, Anna shot to fame for her fight with the Manticore. She saved her friends mid-battle, and suddenly she was the Academy of Heroes' newest heroine. Soon, Elena, the new guild administrator with that charming smile, swept into Ravel ready to team up, and she even had a letter tucked under her arm. The boy's eyes went wide. Turns out the message wasn't random at all. It came straight from the United Federation of Guilds, a force that ruled the world. He took the invitation and burst into the main castle, where they treated him like a priceless guest and brought him straight to the audience he was waiting for. As Ravel sprinted down the hall, giant ice statues, knights and monsters alike, shattered into his path and attacked him, and this was the last thing he ever expected. He braced for battle, even though he couldn't make sense of why the attack was happening in the first place. With fire magic blazing, Ravel smashed the statues to pieces, then watched them collapse into nothing but ordinary water. Levis, the Federation's leader, burst onto the scene and showered the boy with praise for his insane strength, because the Academy totally missed out on gaining a real hero. Then he pulled Ravel along to lunch, and that juicy wild boar meat absolutely blew his mind. It was the best he'd ever tasted. Levi breaks it down. The meat sits warm for 20 days so fungi can grow, and it's those fungi that carve out the tenderness and the insane aroma. Sounds wild, but careful processing wipes out the risks, and some gourmet legends absolutely crave that very flavor. Ravel finally demanded to know the real reason he was invited, and when the truth hit, it landed like a punch. They were granting him access to the county of Alida. Turns out he took down the sage, the great swordsman, and the manticore, and the poison wrecking his body. Research proved it came straight from that same manticore. Levis had no clue how Ravel ended up there, and Anna couldn't figure out why she buried the truth. But at that elite academy, they don't care about excuses, only results. Ravel was over the moon. He'd been dreaming about getting into this academy for ages. But there was one catch. If he wanted that official invitation, he had one brutal shot: climb to S-rank adventurer status within a year. This hit him hard, Just moments ago, Levi had crowned him the most worthy candidate. And the cunning Levis broke it down like this. He'd prove to everyone he's worthy because real heroes aren't made in comfort. They're forged by brutal missions. To claw your way to S rank, it might take years. It all comes down to how many tasks you've actually finished and how high they rank. Ravel could already feel it. Next year was going to be a nightmare. He thanked them for the treat, then shot back to the guild. Levis finally exhaled. Ravelli showed him a mirror of his own younger days, and that boy threw himself into non-stop missions and relentless training. After a while, he realized he wasn't gaining any fresh skills. Until the day the real game changer clicked, he could create a spatial inventory. Ravel fought through the hard training, then nailed it. Now he could stash things with zero limits across time and space. Lara's face lit up with pure excitement, and a sting of envy, too, because if she had a skill like that, her business would explode overnight. So she leaned in and begged to be taught. Ravel admitted that pulling off that kind of effect is brutally hard, but he swore persistence always pays off. Then Arvar's eyes lit up, and he couldn't wait to do it again. With Sage Cult by his side, they trained even while they slept. 1 hour of that sleep hit like 8 hours of full rest. All those brutal runs and training finally clicked. Ravel blasted so fast the naked eye couldn't even track him, and Yura was the one who taught him that exact method. Administrator Leon, or Amina, kept throwing him the deadliest quests, and Ravel sliced through them fast, then came back for the next one. In the end, Elena snapped that she couldn't hand him even the simplest tasks anymore, because if the guild kept losing him, it would empty out. Ravel demanded new missions, and the whole thing erupted into a heated showdown. He was gunning for a promotion, but they shut him down and made him wait 1 more month. He refused to quit, practically begged for tougher trials so he could rocket to the top rank fast, and Elena promised him a trial quest before his promotion. Right then, Lara pitched a month-long special mission. Confident Ravel would claw his way into that promotion. On the Frappara's dungeon's 20th floor, they had to steal the Minotaur's horns. And man, the effort it demanded was absolutely brutal. Ravel's eyes lit up. He thanked them for the chance, then swore he'd claw his way into a promotion. He pulled Laura into a hug, and joy lit up his face. Then the girl demanded he read the mission terms slowly and carefully. Turns out, to move up as a B-rank adventurer, you've got to start by recruiting 2 more people to form your team. Ira was the first to step in. She'd been craving a chance to stay close to Ravel, and when she finally did, Ravel's side thanked her for her stubborn drive and called her strength exactly what they needed. Ira was sure they'd make it, even though she only made it to the 5th floor of the dungeon, because she'd been training non-stop at every single chance. Ravel lit a fire in her, and together they pushed through training until their bodies shook, laughing anyway because every brutal round made them stronger. Ira only trained once a week, but she never told her father, because he seemed to understand everything anyway, even while he stayed silent. The team's 3rd member was Sage Cult. Ravel couldn't believe it when he said yes on the spot, because Ravel wanted to try out a brand new magical technique. The cult spilled their plan to unlock brand new powers, and Ravel couldn't wait. He eagerly agreed. After the mission wrapped up, the sage pushed for some research, and Ravel didn't hesitate to agree to those terms. This boy also craved a journey with his friends. He was thankful for his tiny dragon, Q, but he couldn't stop doubting whether it would truly transform. Ravel warned that Q needed to stay away, but Q still slipped in, teleporting right into the fight and helping take down the manticore. And the crazy part, no one knows how he transformed into a giant dragon. The cult warned, don't you dare ignore the pet, because even the dragon researchers who have spent their whole lives studying monsters had never laid eyes on anything like Q. They claimed the Mechanical Guild was gunning for Q, but he fought his way out, and now he's hiding a whole vault of secrets inside himself. Ravel finally decided to bring his pet along on the mission, and Q lit up like a kid in a candy store, swearing he'd be the most helpful thing on Earth. The very next day, the united crew blasted off for the dungeons of Frappar, and their guild saw them off with nothing but the best wishes. They finally slammed into the labyrinth's main gates. First stop, registration. Ira pushed for them to go together because she'd been here before. Then bam, Agito and Lizzie burst onto the scene, old acquaintances with everyone shocked they'd shown up. Agito already sparred with Ravella over their tournament loss, but now the tension cranked up. Both of them were chasing a rank promotion, and on top of that, Agito got a special task. Ravel felt a hit of disappointment when he realized he wasn't the only contender, but he still braced himself for the fight, while Lizzie broke down the dungeon's structure right then. She realized the deeper you go, the nastier the monsters get. But surprise, bosses can still pop up on the upper floors too. and right now the Minotaur is waiting on the fourth. Once the Minotaur showed up, the Federation swooped in and seized its territories. Because that menace is a straight-up nightmare for B-rank adventurers, so most guilds steer clear of the job. Ravel snapped to it. He'd been granted special permission. Lena admitted the real paperwork would take months, then she grinned and pulled her old trick again. They started lining up to dive into the labyrinth, and chaos erupted right on the spot. Lizzie and Agito wasted no time, jumping straight in with everyone else. Ravel shot himself a quick reminder. His special permit let him slip through without registration, but Agito wasn't going to back down. The cult told everyone to stay calm and still sign in, but Ravel's rage exploded when he realized the safe zone was already taken. Finally, he slammed into the checkpoint. The talk kicked off fast, everyone blurting out what they wanted, and then Ravel grinned and declared that his team was finally ready to march in. Most adventurers either rushed through the doors or bolted back out, like a non-stop stampede of noise, and the cult's message hit hard: stay cautious, no matter what. Ravella blinked in disbelief at the sea of people itching to dash through the labyrinth. Then Ira snapped, "Easy," saying the first 10 floors are trap-free, so you can speed right through. They blasted themselves with magic to jack up their speed and tore ahead of their rivals. Before they knew it, they were charging onto the 11th floor, and everyone locked in their gear because terrifying monsters were about to burst out. But just like that, the peaceful calm snapped. Magic unleashed, a massive stone crashed down nearby, and somehow it missed everyone by pure miracle. The sage cult stepped in, tore into the battlefield with blazing fire magic of terrifying power, and prayed it would be the move that wins it all. The stone opponent drank in the magic, and snapped it right back, blasting everyone into stunned silence with that kind of raw power. In the end, the spell's power finally crushed the enemy, and Ravel along with the others vowed to move twice as careful from now on. To push forward, they had to wipe out every enemy, no exceptions. Yet thanks to their tight teamwork, they still clawed their way through the worst situations imaginable. While Agito and Lizzie kept forging ahead, Lizzie reached out to help, and it only cranked up her partner's irritation. Lizzie pushed him to learn fresh techniques and new weapons for faster reactions, but Agito stayed stubborn. He only wanted to beat Ravel and nothing else. They slipped into a silent pocket where even heartbeats sounded loud, like the story was about to open the door to some special realm. While Agito and Lizzie sat in dead silence, Ravel's crew had already stormed the 18th floor. Everything was running smoothly until Cult started to panic. And right when it mattered most, she made a deadly mistake. She stepped straight onto the trap, and now death could strike any second. But that wise man still pulled her back from the brink with alchemy, and he swore it wasn't luck. After meeting Ravel, he'd been obsessively studying every new possibility he could find. He laid it out: modern magic is way easier to master than ancient magic. And that's exactly why Ravel is such a rare walking treasure of knowledge. But that kind of weird uniqueness freaks everyone out. People hate the unknown, and Ravel is nothing like any other talisman owner. Gifted people are the nation's heartbeat, forged by places like the Academy of Heroes. Yet discrimination still claws at them, because some people treat the weak like they're nothing. The cult sat there forever, mulling over one chilling thought. Maybe even the ones who hand out gifts don't truly grasp what those talents really are. Meanwhile, the team bursts onto the 19th floor, and the challenge level shoots through the roof. Both teams clashed here, and Agito shot out a warning. Those angry monsters in the crowd are no joke, so everyone lock in and focus. Nobody could figure out why the monsters kept piling up. This had never happened before. Lizzie snapped at everyone, "Stay locked in on the fight." People called it Monster House ***. A sudden swarm of enemies exploding into existence right before you hit that special stretch of the maze. Ravel made the call. If they could smash through, they'd hit the 20th floor, right where the Minotaur was waiting to tear them apart. Ravel tried to outrun Agito, because if a deadly trap sparked between them, Minotaur would be the least of their problems. And even though he had a plan, the sage warned him not to spill it in Rome. Ravel didn't just step up. He single-handedly clamped down on every monster and stalled the whole level so his friends could take down the Minotaur. He swore he'd keep those monsters from ever breaching the special zone. And while the three warriors battled the boss, he just had to buy a little time. The cult snapped back sure the mission was in trouble, and time was almost gone from the Federation. But Ravel just grinned, certain he'd find another way to climb the ranks. Lizzie chose to stay by his side and help. Together they could face it, and the three of them were already plenty to take down the boss. Agito wasn't happy, because somehow Ravel made it look like a favor, but he still nodded and promised to carry out the plan and smash that monster ASAP. Ravel and Lizzie have to push the rest of the way now, before the endless monster horde drains every last drop of them. And if they make it out alive, people will call them legends. Ira and Agido slipped up to the 20th floor, spotted the Minotaur fast, and slammed into it, while their friends kept the rear line locked down. They just stumbled upon the Federation's injured manager. He gasped, "Run right now? This Minotaur is way stronger than it looks." The bloodied leader screamed that even rank warriors would get wiped out, and the monster promptly blew past every expectation, crushing them faster than anyone could imagine. Meanwhile, Ravel and Lizzie kept mowing down monsters, but the enemy wave just wouldn't break, like it was going to go on forever. Every adventurer got slammed into a lethal trap, staring at the walls like, "How are we getting out of this?" While the heroes battled their way through the labyrinth, those cheerful aristocrats clinked wine glasses with the high priest, who wouldn't touch anything but pure water. Turns out they'd been buddies since childhood and they could talk like family. No stiff rules, no formalities. In this world, it wasn't flashy titles that decided your destiny. It was raw talent, those divine gifts that decided exactly what kind of fate you'd get. Deep in the labyrinth, the fight raged for hours, and nobody had any clue when it would finally stop, while the cult lunged at the Minotaur again and again, only to get crushed back every single time. He hurled a brutal wind spell at it, and the monster only twitched, barely stunned. The Minotaur didn't just fight. It swallowed outside energy and stitched itself back up with magic. And if they don't crack a way out soon, everyone's going to die. Meanwhile, Lizzie and Ravel kept hammering away non-stop, but those monsters just wouldn't thin out. Ravel crushed it again, proving once more that his unbreakable sword had teeth. Lizzie stared in awe and demanded how he got that good, and he just shrugged. Pure perseverance. But when he clocked Caillou's weird behavior, panic snapped into place, and something dark started sinking into his body. The tiny one bolted away, was told to stay back, and then, right on the spot, it changed completely. Plunged him into total darkness. Like a brand new, brutal, evil magic had wrapped him up so tightly that Ravel had never seen anything like it before. Meanwhile, every team kept throwing everything they had at the Minotaur, but nothing even scratched him. So Ira just kept stalling, fighting to buy precious time. The cult, and Agido too, froze at Ura's skill as she darted in like lightning, snapping up a magical shield to block every hit, the whole thing honed from her training with Ravel. But nobody had a clue how to stop the monster, so the cult made a brutal call, cut off its regeneration by depriving it of what it needs, and that meant a sacrifice. The sage ignited Agido with a blazing aura, telling him the truth. Only ruthless fire wielded with brains could shatter the monster's defenses. Even the cult leader couldn't believe himself. He thought he was pure ego, yet he just forged a brand new spell to hand power to someone else, and now Agido had to strike. While Ravel and Lizzie scrambled to figure out what happened to Q, they watched in horror as he transformed into a massive monster and started wrecking everything in his path. But it was already getting too dangerous, so Lizzie grabbed the moment and struck down the dragon before time ran out. Ravel stood up for his pet, even as Lizzie insisted that what lay ahead wasn't a cute little dragon anymore. It was a deadly monster. But for Ravel, Q wasn't just some beast. He was family, straight up. And when Ravel's words hit the dragon, something inside him shifted for good. The giant body shook with raw agony, but after a few minutes, Q clenched through the rage and shrank down, returning to quiet calm. But this time, Ravel was burning with fury. Anyone who dared step near his friend was going to get obliterated. With fire roaring in his chest, Ravel hacked his way through a sea of monsters, and each burst of rage made him hit even harder. Meanwhile, Agido, fueled by the sage's fire magic, barreled into the fight and matched his opponent's every move. Even with everything pushing against him, he kept his courage and sprinted straight at the Minotaur without flinching. Ira kept blasting her pistols non-stop, hurling magical bullets so precisely they landed on target even from miles away. Then Ravel snapped into a whole new beast. He turned into a full berserker and tore through everything around him like it was nothing. Ira, Cult, and Agido finally exhaled, because their plan landed perfectly and the Minotaur's threat was wiped clean. Down in the next level of the maze, everything went dead silent, and Lizzie stared as Ravel, after wiping out every last monster, just stood there utterly baffled. Everything that went down hit the boy like a storm. He fought his tears and still couldn't help it as he stared at his dragon friend. Meanwhile, the high priest chatted with an old friend, and as he spoke, he brought up the rumor that some people's talents somehow end up weakening the very spirit inside them. As the monsters thinned out on the main roads and the danger finally faded, even the people with insane talents started losing their physical shape. Still, out past the edges of civilization, terrifying new rumors spread, creatures that could strike at any second, so no one could afford to let their guard down. The Supreme snapped out of the conversation. She trusted facts, and she knew some things can't be rewritten. At that exact moment, the room's door creaked open inch by inch. Then a dark, unfamiliar hand slid into view. The mysterious figure slipped back into the divine abode, and the place hadn't changed one bit, until the goddess smiled and welcomed him like she'd been waiting, because now the guest didn't look like he was any longer wandering in the dark. The guest swore determination fueled every win, then burst out laughing so hard it rattled the gods. And right then, countless adventurers abruptly found their magic gone. Suddenly, Lara exploded into the room with a blood-curdling scream and sprinted straight to the bed where Caillou was fast asleep. Even the cult mocked it as foolish, and yeah, for Lara that was saying a lot, but she snapped back hard. It had been days since the mission, and that dragon still hadn't bounced back. Even after the seasoned veterinarian checked everything and found nothing deadly, Q still looked dangerously off, so Bazan had one chilling hunch. It had to be those monsters from the labyrinth. That day, they finally burst out of the dungeon. But the second they spilled into the world, everyone's jaws dropped, because an attack was the last thing anyone expected. Lara was out there saving people when, boom, those losses stayed tiny, all because the Ashida rank adventurer was close by and stepped in. Ravel wondered if Q had caught some curse or disease, but Q still pushed for a mission and refused to stay stuck in that cave. The friends were still scrambling for a plan for Q when Administrator Elena burst into the room. Her shoulders went rigid, and when Ravel pressed her, she snapped back that something urgent had just landed, no limits on how many people could join. Just beyond the Kingdom of Theory, the city of Roro is getting crushed under a monster siege, because these beasts must be wiped out, and the whole region needs to be freed. The second Ira and Lara heard about the dangerous mission, their eyes lit up with hunger for it, yet they both knew just how massive the threat really was. Agito and Lizzie didn't stay on the sidelines either. He shoved himself back into that chaos, dead set on uncovering who really ordered the attack on the city. Lizzie leaned in and asked Agito if he was ready to jump back into dangerous missions. He only smirked and nodded, because all he could think about was grabbing the Minotaur's horns and grinding his way to the next level. But deep down, that grudge against Ravel never died, and he was itching to prove he could crush any mission with zero help. He crushed Lizzie's seriousness by telling her straight up, there won't be any more rank-boosting missions, the maze entrance is shut tight, and now everyone's getting dragged into a brand new task. Among the folks who have taken an interest in all this, there's one name you can't ignore, Ravel, because he's aching to get into the elite academy, all just so he can stay close to the girl he loves. Meanwhile, Anna kept grinding at the academy, pushing herself harder and harder until she could stand above every student and become the strongest there was. The teachers watched her like a miracle. She'd already defended her friends and smashed Monte Carlo, so the real question was how far she'd go next, because a decisive battle is coming in the city and a dragon might be waiting. Captain Isaac breezed up to her, grinning like always, and once again insisted she call him by his first name. No titles, no fuss. He asked if Anna was really a veteran now, since her mission was the first time she'd ever left the academy. And when Anna finally spoke up, she admitted she was a little scared. Still, even with her nerves screaming, she stood her ground, because a crucial person was right there beside her, and she refused to back away. Isaac felt her glow with happiness, because he knew love can make a girl pull off anything. But then, out of nowhere, he got yanked into an urgent meeting he'd totally forgotten. Meanwhile, Colton and Ravel were deep in shock, unraveling the weird new mission details, because once it was done, they were told to meet some friend, and that twist hit them like a punch. That cult dismissed this loud, fancy aristocrat as a weirdo, but even they couldn't deny it. There was something about him that pulled eyes to him like a magnet. Sometimes Colt would catch himself dreaming of being like him, but he knew his own road was nothing like that. Ravel could feel the heavy sadness in his head, yet he refused to pry into it. Meanwhile, the sage snapped that all this talk is pure nonsense. He said the only thing that matters is wiping out the monsters, and never, ever forgetting the safety of the hometown. Roro, a border town big enough to feel safe. Then the impossible happened. A massive invasion crashed into it for the very first time, and the war finally hit here too. Agito and Ira stared at the swarm of monsters, way more than they'd seen on the 19th floor of the labyrinth, and even with terror clawing at her, Ira clenched her courage and refused to back down. She clenched her resolve and stood her ground, because every one of her friends was putting their lives on the line, and this was no time to hide behind fears or cling to old stories. Everyone marveled at Tiny Era's bravery, but to her, it wasn't a big deal. She'd already proven her strength in battle again and again. Levis, the head of the Guild Federation, finally showed up in the city, and the whole place erupted because nobody had ever seen him here before. This town was once a royal retreat built for a honeymoon, but when the wars erupted, it got ripped from romance and turned into a major military base. Crushed by a full-on wave of monsters, the city begged for help fast. So Levis hit the line and demanded an urgent battle, offering a massive reward to anyone brave enough to answer. He vowed to unleash every scrap of fighting skill he had, right up there with the elite, because today was going to be the day he proved his courage. His words lit a spark, not just in adventurers but across the whole city, pushing everyone to step forward and fight for glory, peace, and a future they could finally believe in. The enraged manticores were the first to charge, so one brave fighter sprinted forward and tried to stop them all by himself, desperate to become a hero. Ravel saw the boy's bravery and nodded, then warned him to slow down because that kind of courage could cost a life. He burst in to save them right away. One signature blade swing cut the monsters down before they could even react, leaving every witness staring in pure shock. Anna heard that someone had wiped out an entire pack of manticores, and when she heard the details, her heart sank because it could only be Ravel, her dearest friend. Without holding back a single feeling, the girl sprinted straight to Captain Yan. She needed to find him, and she needed to find him now. Anna hopped onto the dragon and shot off for battle right away, while the captain just grinned and cheered her stubborn courage. Other academy students, fired up by Anna's example, threw themselves into the brawl too, and Captain Isaac couldn't hide his joy because he absolutely adored that kind of explosive opening. Ravel and the other adventurers didn't flinch. They stormed into monster territory, and not a single foe went unchallenged, because the elite academy's best students launched straight at the enemy. And the dream they'd clung to for so long finally came true. Ravel and Anna stood side by side, protecting each other with guts, even when death itself closed in. In the shadows, a dark figure watched every move. Then he grinned, because it was time to kick off the magical war for real. After that defeat 1,000 years ago, he wasn't going to lose again. This sinister enemy didn't just want to fight. He hunted revenge, fueled by every year of humiliation and cold neglect the world had thrown at him. So it turned out the Dark Lord wasn't just aware of Ravel. He knew him well, and he was already plotting how to wipe out the bearer of the talent of diligence. The fight hit its breaking point, and Ravel, right there with Anna, went all out. Meanwhile, Era and Colt threw everything they had into pinning down the threat. Suddenly, everyone went still. Right there, a rank S Hydra tore into the scene, a giant nightmare that sparked pure terror on sight, and Era snapped at Agito to stay sharp. The Hydra's attacks tore through them with terrifying force. Heroes fell by the dozens, crushed by its magical fury before they could even fight back. Right then, the cult stormed into the fight, blasting the battlefield with scorching fire magic that charred the monsters to cinders and cracked their defensive barriers. Calm as ice, he urged everyone to end the fight fast and get to the wounded comrades right away. But then, right out of the fog, a headless figure surged toward the cult, dragging up that cheerful aristocrat he couldn't forget. Colt burned with fury. No way was he throwing in the towel now, because their mission was to cleanse the city, even if death came for him. Then right on top of the ground monsters, flying one swooped in, Ravel snapped to the truth. He'd never catch the enemy up in the sky. At that exact moment, Anna burst into view, then launched an instant attack on the sky's target while riding her hand dragon from behind her own back, and Ravel watched her with proud, burning eyes. Right then, a wild magical current surged through him, and he instantly knew the chaos wasn't random. Someone on the ground was pulling the strings. Ravel unleashed auxiliary magic, surged with speed, and went hunting for the invasion's source so he could flip the whole battle. On the roof of that towering building, he spotted a silhouette dripping with dark energy, and it was the very mastermind behind the whole attack. The opponent refused to give up, claiming this invasion was nothing more than a brutal reminder of the ancient monster war. Now his favorites are going on a full rampage, and nobody's stopping them. Ravel didn't listen. He just charged straight into the attack. But the moment he swung, his blade slammed into an unseen wall. He hurled everything he had into the strike, yet all he got was that brutal cracking sound. Ravel's brutal recoil slammed him back meters, and the black energy flared even hotter. But the young man refused to quit. No armor in his hands, he hurled a shard of the blade straight at his enemy, desperate to flip the whole fight. With one sharp wave of his hand, the Dark Lord crushed his resistance, snatching Ravel and locking him under his terrifying control. He told the boy he's got a phenomenal gift, and now it's time to dig up the truth behind the Great War of the Monsters. Ravel didn't even wait for an answer. When that war's truth slammed into him, he realized the gods don't just grant power, they seed people with the strength to fight off the monsters. The twisted mastermind behind the attack was savoring every second of the chaos, trying to figure out just how truly powerful Ravel really was. Then he finally decided to spill an ancient story, but the spot to talk was anything but safe. You've got to get this through your skull. The end of the world is breathing down our necks, so forget your dreams and face the doom head-on. The dark monster snarled out a power-up spell, then shoved its strength into every creature, pointing them like puppets and driving their bodies forward. In an instant, his magic supercharged the monster army, turning their assault into something far more terrifying than it had ever been. Dark magic has swept over every adventurer. 1 minute they're using their talents, the next they're cut off completely, and now they're teetering on the edge of total annihilation. As the anti-magic flow cranked up even harder, the monsters surged forward on their own, and at last the Dark Lord unleashed every drop of power he'd been hoarding for thousands of years. He leaned in with a nasty grin and told Ravel that talents are nothing but a curse. Right then, Anna snapped, and her dragon exploded upward, flinging itself into the sky. She fought to hold it together, but the chaos won. Anna was yanked from the saddle and sent plunging off a cliff tens of meters high. Right at the last second, Q burst onto the scene and yanked the girl out of a deadly fall. Then Anna grabbed him in a tight, grateful hug. She demanded to know how he'd finally come to his senses, but Q only shook his head. This wasn't the moment for talking, and then he barreled into the attack. But he didn't get a second to breathe. Another monstrous flying giant, even larger and meaner than the last, swooped in and tore into them. But this time, Anna moved like lightning. She shot in close and landed a game-changing sword hit before slipping right onto Q's back. The dragon praised her lightning-fast agility and urged them to go after Ravel right away. Then Q's memory snapped wide open, and suddenly he remembered a whole pile of brand-new things. And now he had to sprint to the master with the one crucial message, before the city finally gets wiped out for good. Panic exploded through the adventurers. Without talents, they were left utterly defenseless as the monsters crashed in. But the cult quickly figured out one terrifying truth. Ancient magic still fires on all cylinders, which means the dark enemy's grip only stretches over the modern talents. He didn't drop his guard for a second. No matter how brutal the situation got, he was going to fight back hard enough to give the enemy a real challenge. Meanwhile, Agido and Ira were crouched in hiding from the next monster, and Ira confessed that without talent, her pistols were basically useless. Agido seethed with rage and helplessness, stuck in the trap with no way out, while Q tore across the sky above the city, hunting for its master. Finally, he spotted Ravel trapped in a brutal black spell. Then the dragon rocketed down in an instant and blasted him with a scorching burst of flame. Anna wasted not a second. She bolted straight at the Dark Lord and swung her sword with full force, but the blow bounced off him like nothing. Everyone knew one thing for sure: beating him was going to be brutal. The Dark Leader taunted Ravel, and that mockery ripped his weakness wide open. But Q refused to stay quiet. He lunged forward, gulped down the Dark Lord, and ripped the master free from the wizard's chains. He said, "Never quit. Perseverance always pays off, even when you're stuck in a dead end." And then he made it crystal clear. He's still on a mission, chasing one priceless thing he's determined to bring back. Turns out the dragon isn't just chasing power. It's trying to hand Ravel the memories of the past, so he can finally find his way into the future. Then boom, the Dark Lord reappeared out of the shadows and swore he'd been waiting for this moment for years, daring anyone to stop his plan. Ravel's pride snapped into rage, no holding back, so the young man smashed a brutal punch right where the enemy's head should have been. That hit landed like a thunderclap, sending the monster flying and smashing straight into the wall, because the ancient magic was awakening right then, unbreakable and untouched by destruction. Ravel didn't stop for a second. He kept striking as the dark beast stumbled in confusion, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Back when life felt calm, his friend leaned in and warned him, "Treat everything with care. Every single choice you make comes back with consequences." The world has snapped out of balance, and their mission is already finished. Now they've got a lock in a brand new target. Now they had to scour the worlds, hunting for the ones that could truly cradle life and thrive. But this world was nothing like paradise. Powerful hands crushed the weak, and there were countless others just like it. Out of everyone, one stood out as special, human. They looked like the observing gods, but their lives were short, packed with wild potential. It looked like humanity, This strange little species was on the brink of vanishing in just a few hundred years, and watching them felt pointless. Every divine creature knew the truth: wiping out the world is child's play. Just hit the core buried deep in the center, where the source of life is concentrated. That's where souls vanished after death, where every memory got sorted, sharpened, and prepared for the next life, and even the gods weren't allowed to meddle in it. But the observers got the power to forge brand new species, creatures that could survive anything, and little by little, they mutated into monsters. After Ravel wrapped up the mission, his partner urged him to go. Because every last thing here was done, the world had been abandoned to the monsters, and somehow a full 1,000 years had slipped by. But when the observers finally crawled back to the human world, they hit a jaw-dropping sight. Humans didn't just survive, they built a real, living civilization. Every calculation was a total bust, yet humanity didn't vanish at all. It exploded into life, and honestly, it was mind-blowing. Monsters that kept getting stronger every time they reincarnated were finally seized by humans, and turned into a lifeline to keep everyone alive. Humanity cracked magic and turned it into a lifeline, a power that was once meant to shepherd souls to their core, but now it's the thing keeping them alive. That left everyone staring. How could anyone possibly know something they weren't meant to know? World-shaking wisdom belonged to gods alone. After digging into what was really going on, they realized the world's wisdom had skyrocketed, but they barely had a moment to think it through. Wisdom is what sharp-eyed observers know about the ecosystems around us. But now humanity has blown past it all, leaving magic, architecture, and medicine in the dust. And the observers were so lost they didn't know what to do about this anomaly anymore, because evolution doesn't quit. So Ravel said, "Fine," and dove in to investigate everything himself. Even though the rule said don't interfere, curiosity clawed at him, and he slipped into the city in disguise, blending in like any normal guy. Even with monsters lurking out there, the world still looked polished, organized, and on track. Ravel couldn't stop admiring how far people had managed to push forward. The biggest shock hit when that girl started playing with the monster, because that broke every rule we knew. Monsters weren't supposed to do anything but kill. Ravel, who'd cracked human language, demanded how she could possibly befriend something like that. Then the girl only flinched, apologized, and begged her not to upset her precious favorite. She told them the monster might be annoying or even dangerous, but it's still just a game. And somehow they're out there eating, chatting, and hanging out like they're a real family. The girl wrapped her arms around her friend and swore she'd do anything, to get him accepted as full-on family. Ravel froze when the child's words hit him, and that bright, carefree girl somehow flipped his whole life onto a new track. He couldn't forget the time she treated him to a jam bun, then lit up and eagerly taught him exactly how to bite into it the right way. Beside him, the girl grinned every single day, whipping up brand new stories to share with the dragon, and that quirky guest who somehow always ended up right in the middle of it. In this world, one being forged everything from nothing, and then he cracked the secret to keep birthing brand new worlds, until hundreds of trillions of wild variations poured into existence. But little by little, these worlds started collapsing, piece by piece, and even the immortal deity felt a hollow emptiness, like every move it made had finally lost its meaning. The goddess was desperate to keep at least one world from unraveling, but she couldn't babysit them all, so she forged the Watchers. Their job was simple: hunt for habitable worlds. But if they messed up, there'd be zero mercy. Every mistake got logged for God's report. And finally, the goddess uncovered a breathtaking world still rising day by day, powered by people who refused to stop working, so full of purpose it practically begged for something great. But even now, the overseers couldn't wrap their minds around it, because they'd lived in this very world once too, surrounded by magical beings. Turns out they screwed up from the very start, and if that's true, their whole reason for existing is hanging by a thread. But maybe this time the verdict was wrong, because even magical creatures are born, live, and fade into the life cycle, and if there's not a single sign of destruction, then the goddess can finally celebrate the rebirth. But even that couldn't fix the real disaster. Ravel and his partner handed down a fake verdict. Now it's anyone's guess whether they can keep watching this world at all. But his partner snapped coldly, "You don't get to mess up, no mistakes, no evidence." Then he vanished on the spot, and Ravella was left standing there, torn between two directions. Soon the world got slammed by a monster nobody had ever seen, pure rage nonstop. And no hunter could stop it. One squad after another got wiped out. Out of nowhere, Ravel, young and fearless, stepped in, and with one unstoppable strike, he cut through the monster like lightning through the silence. With that win, he shattered the one rule he swore to follow: never let observers interfere. Then the twist hit. He ended up trapped in the very world he was watching. He had lost his divine status. His magic was still there, but the immortality was finally ripped away. That new body came with age, pain, and the real threat of death. But when that girl thanked him straight from the bottom of her heart, it hit him. Every sacrifice was worth it. The look in her father's eyes burned with gratitude too, and that's when Ravel finally got it. She couldn't keep running from fate anymore. His new calling: protect this world. And just like that, right around the corner, a brand new chapter ignited: the magical war. Anna came back with explosive news. She sensed a massive burst of magic in the air, and even though she hated fighting, only she could slip into the sky and scout what was out there. Her loyal dragon, Caillou, soared beside her with pure joy, and it felt like fate had stitched their souls together through countless lives. Ravel suddenly brushed his fingertips over her head, and she felt the impossible hit her like lightning. He called it a memory explosion. He wished that in her next life she'd soar beside a dragon too, because she deserved the real gift of a dragon rider. Anna lit up with pure joy, her smile blazing like a sunrise, and Ravel caught every note of her laughter, remembering how it once went. The watchers just watched as if nothing mattered, while he kept hunting for the meaning of life, and finally he blurted to the girl, "So tell me, why do you live?" She just shrugged and said, "I've never even stopped to think about it, I just live." That simple answer cracked Ravel up, and right after he threw out one brutal truth: it's time to end this terrible war. Because he finally knew who sparked it in the first place, but every time he tried to shut it down, death came hunting. And still he fought his way to his goal. Even after the opponent fell, he clenched through the pain and grinned, whispering, "You'll change nothing." Ravel was desperate to figure out what happened to the goddess's magic, because that power should have summoned monsters instantly. But maybe his partner had something completely different up their sleeve. People grow by crashing. Every mistake knocks them down, and every loss hardens them into something stronger. And he swore that in 1,000 years, they'd crawl back for divine help, and Ravel would be dead, because that's when the war would spark all over again. Ravel clenched his fists, rage burning hot, but it didn't matter because those observers had already botched things once before. Your partner just burst out laughing. "You've got zero talent, your only job is to watch, nothing more, and I'm the one who gets to decide." With every ounce of strength, he unleashed a magical strike at the girl. She had zero chance to block it. Horror swallowed Ravel whole. He sprinted to her side, but the life slipping out of her young body was already happening fast. He cursed at his own indecision. But even right now, in the middle of this do-or-die moment, there had to be a way out. As she started to fade, it hit him like a storm. Everything she'd ever told him over the years, and all the things she still hadn't found the words to say. Her voice shook to the core, and with her final breath, she whispered, "You're the most beautiful man in the world." Then something inside her loosened, the weight slid off her chest, and she drifted, her eyes shut. Ravel, wrecked by pain, swore through clenched teeth. He'd guard this world to his final breath. No matter how many times he had to be reborn, she had to stay at his side. Ravel had no clue what waited after death. Maybe it all just vanished. But he made one thing crystal clear: if the world disappears, you have to do something huge. After the great magical war, something unbelievable rained down from the sky: talents, straight from above. And at age 12, every single person got one unique ability, like the world itself chose their fate. Years dragged on, and the war finally slipped from everyone's minds. Peace settled over the world. But even in all that happiness, one kid just wouldn't laugh. The boy shut himself off from games and friend talk. He only chased knowledge. Yet the other kids kept trying to pull him into conversation, and it was especially that one girl. She just rolled into the city, all smiles and friendly eyes, like she belonged. But Ravel, back when she was a kid, had warned her, "Don't come near, I'm a monster." And still she grinned and said, "Now we're friends." So Ravel finally crossed paths with Honor again for the second time. And now, in this world, they stood shoulder to shoulder amid the chaos of battle, staring down an enemy who knew the truth. Ravel had poured everything he was, strength, memories, knowledge, straight into the dragon. Years later, Q had become the keeper of Ravel's power, and as people honed their gifts, they rose up, building temples, cities, and whole empires. But could they really survive with no talent at all? Another century was ticking away, and as the years crawled on, society turned cruel, spitting on the weak and treating them like they didn't matter. And after countless years, a band of exiles from the royal capital stumbled on an ancient laboratory, where the whole world was finally set to kick off again. Q blinked, clueless, until danger slammed in, and then the truth roared back. He had to reclaim what he'd been guarding for centuries. And just like that, the world hit the edge again. When the dark monster declared the end, talents withered, people crumpled into helplessness, and Ravel refused to go down. Only one guy could bring the power back, and even if he didn't have the special talents, he was sure of one thing. Magical monsters can bleed because immortality isn't real. Ravel lunged and smashed forward, the impact roaring like a warning. He was done letting that monster think it had him figured out. But the enemy's real flaw was simple. He didn't understand people at all, and he looked down on them as if they were nothing but weakness, while Levis, trapped in his thoughts, stared at the ruins of his academy. Captain Isaac didn't quit. Unlike Lewis, he dug in with his allies and kept the battle raging. Levis swallowed his doubts and confessed he never thought the day would arrive when the Dragon Knights crumbled, and now even the royal troops had lost the fire to fight. Isaac snatched his hand and barked, "Say it one more time and you'll spill every secret you swore to protect, because a leader can't afford to lose faith." He fired up Levis with memories of old glory. Monster after monster he'd beaten, labyrinths he'd raced through. Levis stared in shock. Was this really praise for the years he'd spent getting to know them? Those words slammed hope back into him. Lewis fired up his whole team again, proving that even without special talents, if you can still stand, you fight. While the city burned with a Hydra's fury, the adventurers closed in and trapped it. And now, at last, the decisive moment had arrived. Booming explosions ripped through the buildings and rattled the monster's body. Then Egido snapped into action and charged in with an all-out attack. Charging at the front, he barked, "Destroy the Hydra," because if they failed now, there might never be another shot. Everyone knew it. This was the make-or-break moment, and they battled with every last ounce of strength, fighting for a single shot at salvation. The Hydra snapped a magical membrane free and burst out of the trap, then rampaged straight through everything around it. Most fled, but Egido stayed, locked in on saving Aru, and when it finally hit him, he knew it was probably the same reason he crashed in that tournament. Meanwhile, the headless monster tore through the resistance, crushing hope as people fought tooth and nail to rip another street back from its grip. Knights crashed into battle with steel swords while adventurers cobbled together scraps of magic, all because they wanted to flip the course of everything. Of this fight, the Cult of the Wise cracked ancient magic secrets and handed them to everyone else, and somehow he could read the mood of every single person without a single word. Fire magic, what he once wielded to blast dungeon traps to pieces, was his absolute peak power, yet he still refused to stop hunting for something even better. On his lone dive into the strangest magic, the cult never once thought about sharing power. He went hunting for the ultimate magic, determined to master it all alone. But that magic doll talent turned any spell into pure fuel, so he finally made his move, empowering everyone standing at his side in the fight. And yep, every adventurer got a brand new power. Scorching fire, freezing icy wind, devastating storms. Also, they could team up and crush the evil that's creeping to end the world. The cult hit the target dead on. They didn't just want to act, they wanted to be carved into history as humanity's savior. The headless enemy refused to quit. He swung his hands and smashed the stone bridge, shattering it into the other side of the city. A storm of stones smashed from the sky, driving the squad back on their heels. But the cult had been biding their time, ready to strike the second they faltered. Lars suddenly burst into the scene, the very same traitor. She was rushing to the wounded, and the cult had no clue why she'd shown up. Lar tore into her own wounds, checking if any magic still clung to her, and the cult cut in, barking at her to get out. The girl wasn't scared for even a second. She pulled out a clear elixir, ordered herself to drink it, and watched its power already start to crumble, slipping away beyond the inventory. For the cult, it was a total gut punch. A woman who loathed magic mastered a magical repository. She admitted it wasn't easy, but it was Ravel who shoved her forward to keep learning. Her strength was slipping away, yet seeing the cult bounce back filled her with joy. Meanwhile, the Dark Lord of Monsters finally clocked it. His plan to wipe out humanity had collapsed, and his monsters were getting driven back hard. Ravel told the enemy to finally see the truth. People aren't as weak as they think, because even after a lost war, they still come back stronger and learn. People can spot their own mistakes, twist the pain into power, and level up. This is the real evolution, the kind that grows your consciousness. Ravel swore he'd prove that no two people are the same, and that raw determination is what makes him unbeatable. When we stick together, we can pull off anything, even the hardest battles, so it's no wonder those builders hate nothing more than people who only know how to spread destruction. With every stroke of his pen, Ravel poured out his love for humanity. The Dark One laughed and said he had zero chance, just a tiny crumb of the Observer's power left, and Ravel was no longer an observer at all. His immortal body vanishes, and the moment it shows up again, he'll be unable to fight. Then the world will flip back to the rules of talent, and everyone will finally realize just how exposed they really are. But Ravel refused, because stepping in and meddling with life means you get dragged into it too. So he handed the power to Q and turned himself into a human. His power got reborn inside the cult's body, and then, slowly, piece by piece, everything he could do started coming back to him. But he refuses to use this power for himself. No matter how far he has to stray, he won't destroy this world because now he's not outside it anymore, he's part of it. Those words hit like a punch in the chest, and the old friend just froze, because they swore they'd fight to the bitter end, yet something about their destiny suddenly feels different. As the adventurers and knights clashed under the cult's command, Ravel suddenly snapped back into emotions he knew all too well. Right in front of him, the goddess appeared again, and when she flashed that smile, it hit him like lightning. He remembered everything that mattered from his past life. Ravel suddenly understood his power didn't come from the cult at all. It was a gift straight from the goddess. She nodded and dropped the truth. She made sure Lar found him in time, then handed the observer's power straight to Q. She even called on the cult to back Ravel, because once they're done, they'll cross paths again, just not in the same shape anymore. When Anna hit mortal danger, that transformation was the only thing that could save her, or maybe Ravel, and Caillou was meant to crank the power back up. Then the goddess revealed this. Ravel took down the manticore with zero help, because not everyone can pull that off. Ravel stared into the unknown and demanded an answer to one last question. How in the world did Ravel, who broke the big rules and got trapped in the endless cycle of lives, somehow learn the most powerful magic of all? It was time to shatter the old him and sprint into the future, no more glancing back. The goddess warned, "You must be flawless, only then can you watch." And right there, among the chosen, someone extraordinary was born, the one who flipped the whole world upside down. This observer somehow mashed humor with real drama and a spark of hope, and it only made other people label him useless, with one person even wanting to wipe him from existence. Everyone had to accept the truth. This world existed because of that imperfection, and once it was born, it turned into something totally one of a kind. Over time, the human world flipped the gods' plans on their heads, turning it into the perfect place to watch, learn, and laugh at what happens next. Now Ravel's power is back full force, and he has to make a brutal choice: stay here or vanish again into the role of an observer. The old Ravel swore this world doesn't need his power anymore, and the new one finally found true friends. But to make that happen, he's got to hand over every last bit of his might. Revived and roaring back to life, Ravel had zero doubt. No matter what, even without his observational power, he'd grow terrifyingly strong, all because he refused to quit. He already had the full truth from the old Ravel's memories, and he dropped a heartfelt thanks to the man who gave it to him. It was only because of that shard of dragon magic that Caillou could fling those memories through time, using raw power to make the past come alive. The goddess let out a wicked laugh, because with this one fragment the demon gets to crawl back into the world again, hunting one mission only: wipe humanity out. Ravel's gratitude hit hard, because he made one thing crystal clear. When you're hunting danger, the central core is the deadliest spot of all, and only the chosen ones ever make it there. Even with it all stacked against him, he pushed forward, determined to finish the mission no matter what. People are relentless, and the second Ravel stopped watching again, everything felt like it shifted. The goddess handed them a fresh pair, and dragged the soul of the one who died near the core back into the world. That imperfect observer got a second shot at life. 2 years later, Lar cracked the truth. There was a way to slash the army's supply route fast, but then a shock hit her when a letter arrived from the sage. All eyes snapped to her as she tore open that letter and read the Academy's message about the hero. But Lar stayed a merchant, refusing to veer off her path, because even in that role she could still steer the heroes. Now she had to go bargain with the kings. At the Academy of Elite Heroes, Ajito and the others stared in awe at its massive grandeur and jaw-dropping design. And even if you had no talents, this place still somehow felt magical. Even after their powers got taken away, people still chased their dream to get inside, and Ag and Ito kept telling everyone, "Don't doubt yourself." Because here, even the talentless could learn everything they wanted as long as they kept pushing. And the real secret: we move as a team, side by side. We can pull off feats no lone hero from the past ever dreamed of. When Ag asked who the last hero was, the answer hit like a punch. His name had been erased into nothingness, and the cult warned, "Don't dig into the past." Meanwhile, cheerful Anna was showing the fresh recruits how to ride dragons, because talent isn't the real prize. What matters is the hunger to improve and the grind to prove it. Believe in yourself, because even dragons get scared of humans, so tread carefully, be sincere, and prove you're a true friend to the beast. Captain Isaac, now teaching, slammed the truth home. The Knights of the Red Dragon are finished, and only Anna can be the key to crushing the Empire across the sea. In this country, people never stop chasing more, and when Isaac weighed Anna's words, he admitted she was right. Right then, Ravel burst into the scene, grinning ear to ear, and with his beast beside him, he greeted the girl like it was all just business as usual. He reminded her of the promises they made. 3 years ago, they bared their hearts, confessed their love, and swore they'd meet again. Anna remembered every word he said. Then she launched into his arms like her heart had been waiting forever, and that familiar spark flared back. They could still make it happen, and they could finally stay together.